thinks shitting on like fan made mix albums that he doesn't like because he has bad taste.
I'm so sorry for that. I felt so bad. I felt like I was just crushing my heart.
You were like kicking a puppy mean about that shit. You're like,
I listened back to the file that KP gave me, and I was like, oh Jesus.
No, I mean it was funny. It was fine. Like they were fan made projects. I get it.
Yeah. It doesn't say anything about how you feel about like the artist in general. So.
And it was definitely. I just didn't know you had such strong, like, violent dislike for it as a genre as a whole.
No,
or I wouldn't even suggested them.
I was kind of holding some stuff in from a lot of people have been recommending me a lot of stuff, and I'm like, better. So it's just it was a mini rant. But I apologize. But I do like.
I mean, I expected a lukewarm reaction to that stuff, but I'm like, he might like the New Jobs one. Like, he likes New Jobs. Like, I think this is really well done. And you're like, this is stitched together like a bloody Frankenstein. And I'm like, okay.
I didn't say that, but
no, you didn't. Nor do you sound like Simon Cowell. If I was freshly kind of racist. But
that's a no from me, dog. Not Simon Cowell, the other guy.
Yeah, that's the you're going to Hollywood guy.
Roses for the OG MF. Where were you when Bob dropped the OG dead Ben? I was up at Tony's on some what was that? No, is that? Yes, it's Zeb Love X Sound. I'm reckless. I took it to the head and heart. You were back as metal face and threatening my pearl white Acura from the second bar. Barfing up a masterclass in charismatic disrespect and trash talk. Mask on, mac and cheese Timberlands. Sold the first Appleseed CDs at your brownie show while you were saying something of a member like the Alamo. I was yelling every word and never late. And when you finally played, hey, I felt the venue levitate. Ask anyone. L out of upstate. Come to learn a Sony phase 1 of the floodgates. Doomsday gluing true grit to the baseline and made himself a hero and a villain at the same time. Back in 94, you had that line about the Nikes on the wire. I'd always see these Nikes on the wire when I was driving through a neighborhood somebody said you stayed in. Convinced I'd found the actual inspiration. For the record, I was not even close to the right neighborhood. Even when the heart is pure, the brain is mush. Thank you for the stories and a fuck you to the normies. Bruin said we lost our Jordan. I would sprinkle in some Voorhees in a gray breeze. I have this memory of me and you rapping meat grinder to each other at a BBQ and BK. Got the same memory with a couple other people too. Trading doom lines, that's what people do. You were always kind of me in person. I tried to play it cool, but I was always kind of nervous. 30 summers of guiding the muddy waters to the men with many names. I hope you're somewhere with your brother, yeah.
Super villaino, Illino, chopping records that my parents listened to. Doom was on a mission to remind you that the magic is what matters. But where'd he find that banner? Where'd he find them patterns? He ain't had no manners. My favorite villain is the drop on Viktor Vaughn, but every time I hit a great day intro, I'ma sing along and catch me sleeping on the GMOs. Them lessons on point. We share a brother in Curie from the question mark joint. Super villain in the function and his peoples never fall. Thanks for introducing us to John Robinson and Starr and the era full of rarefied jewels and making use of airtime for making bad headlines cool. Yo, being crazy takes guts. Monsta Czars had a rep for being nuts. Extra special words and a special herb still lingers. My pantheon is Bird and Mingus, Prince and Metal Fingers. Larger than life, he had his own Nikes. I'm a clear weather brand dude, but dag dome. Food was the anagram. Fresh put me on, I proceed to put on anyone that was fam-a-lamb. And every particle, genuine article. Okay, you stiffed a few promoters who thought they booked a man under the mask, but they could never tell for certain. Walking the walk while talking in third person. He wore a mask so the charge won't grab. On a rooftop with a large stone slab. Seen where the industry was going and had to go nads to go nab. Thanks. A bar is not a measure. A music doom is doing it's a unit of buried treasure. No one never done it better, so I'ma keep my computer on caps lock forever. Long live.
So, I'm going to write this. So we're starting with the MIC album, then Ibliys.
No, the Grimm should be first because Grimm is 2002.
Have you listened to that, Caleb?
Huh?
Have you listened to the Downfall of Ibliys?
I'm gonna guess no. The MF Grimm album has 7 Doom beats on it. It's like a concept album. I'm guessing by the time that explains it much of it to
you said
I heard it.
You said MF Grimm album? No, thanks. No, I did not. I have not heard it.
Ow.
Whoa.
Here, man.
No, that's honestly, I hardly remember what MF Grimm sounds like. So no, I don't. I listened to for the first one. I listened to the EP they did with them playing chess.
Yeah.
For the diction episode, yeah. But no, I haven't listened to any MF Grimm solo, which is not an indictment on MF Grimm. I just never cared.
Well, his best stuff is on the compilation Scars and Memories.
American Hunger certainly has an album cover that is...
American Hunger is some really, really good political hip-hop. It is 3 discs. The beats are,
Look at this album cover. Holy shit.
Yeah.
You want to see some album covers, you need to check out the story of The Hunt for the Gingerbread Man and its sequel and its adjacent mixtape.
Oh, I am looking at it.
Oh, yeah. That's what
wait. There's a 3-part series, Good Morning Vietnam 3-part series.
Yeah, I've downloaded all Grimm stuff and I've just never, it's right up there. Like, it's right, once I get through all 700 Charles Hamilton albums, I will probably start cracking into the MF Grimm stuff that I've not listened to, because there's a lot, and I've never heard a bad Grimm album, but like I was saying when you were, I don't know, having another protein shake and not paying attention, just, his flow is very monotone for, again, very good reasons, like he got shot in the spine, and I think he's unable to, I think he had to have was one of those situations where he had to train himself to rap again, basically. And so his flow is very rudimentary, I guess some would say. Like, it's very easy.
Real Conway hours.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think I said at some point in some review, Conway talked about, being shot and having to learn to rap again, and he never does that. And in retrospect, he always does that. There are probably more Conway verses where he mentions that when he doesn't. Like, the only thing he mentions more than that is his young shooter. Like, he
it's very easy to pick on Griselda. Like, there's so many things going against them. Well, I enjoy them, but it's very easy. Like, they're kind of ridiculous.
They are. I think that's part of the appeal, honestly. Like, West Side Gun is one of the most ridiculous people alive.
Mm-hmm.
West Side Gun was the first rapper to, I believe, brag about getting COVID and beating it.
That does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, this was like March of 2020, and he'd already beaten COVID.
COVID.
Presumably just by being fly.
Yeah, I was wearing the Hermet.
Wasn't he in the hospital right now? Or?
Wait, Gun's in the hospital? I did not know that. No shit.
Yeah, because I saw that.
Real asshole if it's because he has COVID, because I just made that joke. But
yeah, it's pretty much that.
Oh, god damn it!
No, he'll be fine.
Recurring themes of the show: depression, Patrick making comments that make him look like an asshole, and COVID.
He's looking too. He's too fresh to die of COVID. He'll be all right.
He was struggling to breathe. The rappers reveal. And pray for me. They had to call for emergency. So I guess he's not dead because that was December 22nd.
Ah, so he's hopefully better now.
Yeah, it's been proven.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
Really, really hope that we're not proven wrong with this.
Yeah, so it looks like he's having beef with WWE at the moment.
Oh, okay. All right, he's back. Yeah. Okay.
He's good.
Okay, there.
Okay.
No, because they removed some songs from streaming because of the wrestling samples.
Ooh, that sounds about right. There's a Wale joke here somewhere, I'm sure.
It's the one where it's like, raw is Fly God. Which one is that? That's Claiborne Kick. Yeah,
that's on Pray for Paris.
Yeah, Claiborne Kick. That's a great song.
Claiborne Kick.
I fucking love that Boldy verse. I love that Boldy verse.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, West Side's music definitely loses a lot. Like, I mean, I don't think anybody in this discussion would care about it or even recognize where these wrestling samples come from, but he pulls some pretty obscure shit out there, and it actually adds a lot in context if you know what he's doing. So losing some of that stuff, it's kind of like if you got rid of, which I guess they did for a minute, the, like, Bill Murray sound clips on Faces, I guess. There's a lot of the character in the music, or, I don't know, the comic book sound clips in an MF Doom album.
One thing that I found recently that really, really annoyed me that they removed it. I think I made a post about this on Live Love ASAP on the mixtape.
Yeah.
They removed the Old Dirty Bastard samples from Leaf / Take One with main attractions.
they did.
Oh, that
pissed me off.
That's like when No Ceilings on streaming doesn't have the Jay-Z songs.
It is. It's essential piece that was removed, and it was like a musical because there's like ODB singing and crooning really badly, and they integrating that into the song, and I was like, nah, it's not the same. It's such a massive difference.
It's like almost like Rocky sucks so bad now he's actually going back in time and making himself suck in the past when he was actually good by like deleting his actual good.
Yeah, or it's like George Lucas, like re-editing his
ASAP Rocky is
movies.
Rap George Lucas now, retroactively ruining all of his past successes.
Well, like
Album with Morrissey is going to be the Indiana Jones 4. Fuck you, working with Morrissey. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Gosh,
we're gonna make an album with Morrissey in 2022. Like, fuck yourself, man.
Morrisey's that guy that I know I'm supposed to hate, but I don't know a single thing about him other than I'm supposed to hate him. But everyone hates him, but I don't know anything about him. So I'm like, all right, I'll hate him. I don't mind.
Former
I don't care.
Okay.
No, but How Soon Is Now is like a classic breakbeat even. So it's like he made that. He can be a right-wing dipshit. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him. I'll grant him that, you know, Smith stuff is. We've had this discussion on the podcast before. Caleb's a bigger Smiths fan than I am. I still like him, but I think it's like, you know, chimey Johnny Marr guitar sells it more than his mopey shit. But I mean, it's fine. It works in the context of the Smiths, and I've said, and there's one Morrissey solo album I actually like, and bonus points if you can guess what it is, because I don't know if I've said it on the show or not, and it's a deep cut. It's one that not even his fans like, but he's also a complete right-wing piece of shit, and I think it's of that sort of Kanye variety of, I'm going to be a right-wing piece of shit because I know it bothers you, not because I actually believe a lot of this shit. And I think he probably believes some of it because I think he has that, like, dumb British... I mean, yes, I know he's Irish, which, by the way, fuck you for making us look bad. Just that dumb British mindset of, like, British schoolboy mindset. I don't know. I might still try to get canceled. This will make sense if you listen to our year-end episode where we spend the entirety of it trying to get canceled. But...
like Eric Clapton?
I don't want to talk about Eric Clapton.
No, but it's the same thing. Like, he made some really, like, groundbreaking music, but he's been a piece of shit, like, forever. But
I mean, I would say Eric Clapton was in the room when groundbreaking, like, he's a technically gifted musician. He was in the room when other people were making groundbreaking music a long time ago, and then just devoted himself to making lowest common denominator dog shit and being a dog shit person. This was actually giving me a chance to roll out a riff that I was thinking of a week or two ago in another server, where it's like, since it's a really good idea to be having cruises now, because everybody should be going on cruises. That's a great idea. I think that they should have like a freedom cruise where it's like Eric Clapton, Van Morrison, Kid Rock, the guy from Smash Mouth, like a keynote speech by Baked Alaska. Like, I think it'd make a lot of money. I think it'd be great.
Damn.
I thought that would go over a lot better.
I mean, no, it just really makes you think about society, you know? Like,
we live in one.
I heard that we live in one. You think that Mike Deese would want to come on that cruise or no? Would he be a part of it?
Mike Deese and Lil Pump, they could be the openers. They could be the token rap acts.
Right, because you got to have some way to, you know, reach out to the community. So we got to have
like Kid Rock's weed carriers with Monster Truck.
Damn.
literal acne monster truck.
That's the side project. they're gonna form a what is it? What's the black hippie? They're gonna form a black hippie.
It's gonna be like White Cracker. Mike B's Kid Rock, Lil Pump, and Monster Truck are White Cracker. And it's just the cover of John Wayne's rap album 1.
Oh Christ.
Oh my god. I think I've gotten all of my bullshit material out of the way now.
Oh, you got more.
Damn.
No, I mean, last night was it was an angry and depressing show, but it was also good. Like, there's just no way to not be angry and depressed living right now, I think, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, I'm very fucking mad because I literally never go out of the house. I walk my dog. I live in a city that has 2,000 people living in it only. And I go to the grocery store once a week. I have no other activities than that. And how the fuck did I get COVID?
I mean, it's like your favorite album. You don't like shit, you don't go outside. And
yes, my favorite album. Yeah, I don't like shit, I don't go outside. That's been my life for a while. Work from home too, so. But it just doesn't make any fucking sense. Plus now I give it to my wife. It's been worse.
How is it down in your neck of the woods, Sphinx, which I know you are in an undisclosed location in an undisclosed country. We don't know your actual name. So I'm just going to start assuming you're Ryan. But
Ryan,
you share like accent. That makes you the most appropriate guest for the Doom episode because you are a man of mystery. But I've heard tale that you're down Australia, New Zealand way. How bad has it been for you guys in the midst of this bullshit?
I think it's been interesting because numbers wise, it's by far like I'm talking about like probably like 10,000% higher than it ever was. But most people are starting to get accustomed to what they call like the new. It's just people just sort of maneuvering by, and half the people don't care, other half of the people are still taking it seriously, but there is a lack of care that is sort of increasing, but it's nothing drastic. Like our population is not that high. The infrastructure in terms of hospitals and the healthcare and stuff, it's all set up and it's all pretty decent. Like that's getting kind of busy, but even my mate who works in the hospital, he was saying that they started off by saying staff have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and then they switched it to 10 days, and then they said, well, after 3 days, if you got COVID, after 3 days, just come back. Like as long as you're not sneezing everywhere, like just come back to work, she'll be right, as they say in Australia. So that's interesting, but it's nothing drastic. Like work has told us to stay back at least for a month, and they released an email where they said that for at least one of our buildings, they're gonna look into. You have to show a proof that you're vaccinated to come in, which is going to be interesting because a lot of people are anti-vaxxers at my work.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really looking forward to going back to work tomorrow. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I ranted about this on last night's episode. I've been ranting about it since I've been going through this. Like, smarmy comments from anti-vax people are going to be really hard to deal with right now. Like,
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I have my views and things, but with like anti-vaxxers, my issue is not even like the anti-vax, but it's that always without a doubt, there's like a whole bunch of baggage that comes with that. It's like they're not just anti-vaxxers; they're also harboring very, very problematic views. Yeah, very progressive. Yeah. Very progressive views on race and
sexism,
gender, and all that nice stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
so the thing is, like,
they're patriotic.
It ends up being that being anti-vax is the least of the issues when discussing some things with them. And the good thing and the bad thing is that all of it has come out and surfaced. With this, so it's like now I can sort of weed out the people. And none of this is said to my face. This is just me overhearing conversations in the kitchen, or just someone else told me that someone else said something. They're like, oh, by the way, he's an anti-vaxxer. I'm like, oh, that tracks.
You should be like your favorite rapper, Young Jeezy. Tell them haters, say it to my face.
Yeah, exactly. There is no chance. There's no chance they would say no to that. But I should get my Jeezy on. But that's me. I'm doing all right.
Yeah, just super depressing all around. That's great. Well, you know who didn't have a problem wearing a mask?
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. All right. 17th botch transition. Living Off Borrowed Time podcast. Joined for the third or second, depending on which sequence you prefer to listen to this in. It's on you as the listener. We're throwing the responsibility to you. Basically, we had big plans for a memorial to one of our favorite rappers, MF Doom, at the beginning of last year. But now you're listening to this in 2022, and clearly plans did not necessarily pan out. So we essentially it was a 3-part episode. We were going to have 3 different guests for 3 different eras of Doom. And part 1 came across great. Part 3 came across great. With the guests you're going to hear today, we lost the audio for part 2. Sorry about that. Respect to No Diva for doing the episode. So to compensate for it, many months down the line, we decided what better way than to use our guests from part 1 and part 3 and synthesize it together and do a remix, much like Madvillainy did a remix, Madvillain 2. And this is what you get. That was the equivalent of an exhausted Alex Jones ad pivot, and I'm very sorry for it. But as an insight to the creative process, that was like the 18th take for the intro. So that's all you're going to get. I'd like to welcome back to the show Alex, Diction, hip-hop, essentially the reviewer of record that isn't Legends Will Never Die on RYM. And
yes.
Oh my
Australian
God.
correspondent, 6th member of the podcast behind Trav and Wyatt. Battered Sphinx, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I profoundly apologize for that intro, but you're not getting me to try it 9 more times, or it'll be here all afternoon. So,
Why do I get
Caleb's over there too.
Legends Never Die?
Who cares? You know, you guys know who I am. Diction definitely is in rare air being compared to Legends Will Never Die. So I don't know if he's ever received that comparison before.
No.
Well, there's actually, when we get to one of these albums, there is somebody that on the site, and I feel like I'm not trying to slander anybody, but there's somebody who like bit your style harder than ever when we get to one of these albums. And I think haven't been around for like 10 years, to the point where I think they even kind of stole your name a little bit. So do you know who I'm talking about?
Just Spawn?
No, that doesn't even sound like your name. No, I'm talking about Vocab.
Ooh.
Diction, Vocab.
Oh, it's a little spicy.
I don't know.
Is like,
it's cool. It's like I actually thought his reviews were your reviews, not like, or his list was your list. I'm like, wait a minute, Diction doesn't write this much stuff ever. So, like, because your reviews are very succinct and his are more like, wordy. But, and he hasn't been around for 10 years, and I'm not making any. I just did make an accusation, but
I never noticed. Oh, he's got a guide to MF Doom.
he does, and it was actually very useful. And actually, a lot of some of the stuff, more obscure stuff, we'll be talking about in this episode. I owe to that list. So this is not a diss, nor is it a diss to Legends Will Never Die, who it might seem like we make fun of a lot on this show, but somebody's got to review, quote unquote, review the stuff that he does. So anyway, so
it's very fast the way he listens to albums. Been out for 30 minutes and the review is out like 15 minutes after.
He gets advanced copies,
like Legends' way of consuming music is kind of like, I don't know if you guys in your countries have Soylent bars.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a sort of thing where it's like you take all of the chewing and digesting and enjoyability out of food and just can make it into like a cereal bar that you're just consuming to just like as fast as possible. It's like, that's kind of Legends' process, I think. He's like a Soylent music listener. So
it's called efficiency.
Yeah, it's efficient. So, anyway, so in the original lost episode of this, which will not be available on the Patreon, sorry for our Patreon subscribers and those on the Substack, but we covered the big four, I would say, of Food, Geedorah, Viktor, Vaughn. Well, the big three, Food, Geedorah, and Viktor, Vaughn. But we kind of decided to expand the purview of this one a little bit because this is Doom's big period. And just for the sake of completeness, we're going to cover a few more obscure ones that maybe have flown under the radar. Some for good reason. Some maybe there are some gems on there that you hadn't considered. Although I don't think anybody's going to argue the more obscure stuff on here is a replacement for Madvillainy or Food or Geedorah or Vaughn. So,
yeah, I think
maybe, I don't know. Sphinx is always surprising me with more things he dislikes than likes, but maybe he's going to argue for the Monster Island Czars album is the best thing on here. I don't know. So
we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
We'll get to it when we get to it. But So in the other episodes, we had started off by asking the guest what their introduction to Doom was. I'm not going to relitigate that here because obviously we've gone over that before. But I guess a good way to start would be, I guess we can just dive right into it. I was going to say, when have you heard of the big albums from this period? But if we're going to go chronologically, we might as well start chronologically. And starting chronologically would not be starting with a proper MF Doom album. It would be starting with his frequent collaborator turned eventual enemy, MF Grimm, who we did cover in part 1 with Diction on the MF EP. This is the concept album, the Downfall of Ibliys, and I'm probably butchering that.
Yeah,
I think it's Ibliys, but yeah.
So I actually did not do my homework on this episode because I forgot about this one. I did listen to it at the time, like back in the past. I remember having a positive impression of it, but a lot of problem with Grimm is that a little of him goes a long way with his flow and subject matter, but he's a great writer, he's a great rapper, and he's always sounded at home on Doom production. There are 7 Doom beats on here. I guess you guys are much more up on your Doom than I am. You could probably trace which special herb goes where. So, but I wouldn't say it's essential unless you're a super Doom completist. Like I don't think any of the Grimm stuff is. But it's all worth hearing if you find that you like his style. But I will say his style is an acquired taste.
Yeah, Grimm is like a different thing compared to Doom. So you can be into Grimm or not into Grimm and still be in Doom. But yeah, this is the first time where we really got to hear the special herb beats used by rappers, and it also has some count-based D beats, which I think is a nice thing because count-based D was pretty good at that time.
Speaking of count-based D, I didn't think I was going to have a chance to mention this, but I mean, he's also somebody who was at least at one time very closely associated with Doom. They haven't done a lot of work together, but Doom was on. He was on Dwight Spitz for sure?
Yes, he has 2 features.
Is Quite Buttery on there? Is that one of them? Strategy.
Yeah, Quite Buttery and Make a Buck.
Yeah, Quite Buttery is one of my favorite Doom verses. And I think Count Bass is somebody that has flown under the radar that with all, the reappraisals and that have come of Doom since he passed on, that Count Bass should definitely get another look too, especially because he has like 50 albums that he's put out since people stopped looking for him. Because people really stopped looking for him after Act Your Waist Size, I think. Well, a really brief window where he was like one of those Stones Throwy type rappers. That
I think it's when he started making like 5 albums per year that I kind of lost the track. But I did like Midlife Crisis from him in 2008. I think that from 95 to 2008, pretty much all of his stuff is quality. He's a very good artist. But yeah, back to the Grimm album. It has sort of a Doom sound to it because of the multiple beats. But the rest of the beats, I don't think they're amazing. And Grimm, for me, can only do so much. He's kind of limited. I think you've mentioned this before. So it's worth listening, like as an historical piece. And I think it was more important back then on the underground scene. I remember a lot of people talking about this album, like before Madvillain blew up or any of that stuff, because there was a lot of people into Doomsday. So they were, this was a pretty big deal. Well, for on the underground hip hop forums anyway. But for now, I don't think like it's really essential, but it might be worth checking out for the Doom beats and a few verses.
Thanks. You got a take on this one or not really?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't listened to this. It's been on my list for a while. Looking back, I think American Hug is probably the only album I've listened to in full. But the thing with MF Grimm, and the MFAP. The thing with MF Grimm is that I haven't listened to a lot of full projects of his, but I have listened to a few tracks of Scars and Memories, which is a compilation that I think Diction mentioned is probably a great collection of his work.
It's got all his 90s singles on it,
and that will probably explain why. That the fact that it is from the 90s, because like you said, Pat, is that his flow is monotone. But since I mostly listened to that, I guess his 90s stuff, I didn't really hear that. But I guess it is because it's pre-accident. But stuff like I think maybe 2 tracks I've listened to on repeat so much as I think it's Whack MCs and Emotions. And he definitely comes from he's definitely much more of a traditionalist of a rapper than MF Doom. He's definitely cut from the Cool G Rap cloth, who he has collaborated with quite a lot all the way back in the 90s. So yeah, I unfortunately haven't listened to this album, but I guess all I could say is some of his 90s stuff. I just really loved his voice and his flow on some of that early stuff. Now with this album, from what I understand, it's supposed to be like a concept album. About, not quite sure what it's about. Of course, it's called Get It Opera.
Lots of concept albums in hip hop don't make sense to me. like you can have a concept and there's a reference here and there, but most of the time it's very loose. And
Well, you know what concept album does make sense and holds together completely is The Hunt for the Gingerbread Man later in MF Grimm's career, which has just incredible cover art. I cannot recommend the cover art to The Hunt for the... Then there's a sequel as well, and a mixtape where... Grimm, I think later in his career got into a lot of rap tropes that I just love, which is like elaborately terrible mixtape art, and also the One Below style acronyms for things, which is like Gary Busey style, like Fear, like False Evidence Appearing Real. Like, I think that he has a lot of songs. Like, he has one album where it's like nothing but acronym titles, which is ridiculous. Like, every single song, I'm going to try and find it. But I think I'm making fun of Grimm more than I intend to, because I think he puts a lot, I think he and Doom are kindred spirits in that they are very, very creative and don't really like that. And I think that was a bigger deal, like you were saying, at the time in the underground scene, which I was not as privy to as you were. Again, I think I've gone into this on the podcast. My listening history, it was like closer to 2004. And we'll get more into this when we talk about Madvillainy, because that was like such a pivotal album for me and getting me into it. So I wasn't really on these forums at that point. But I think it was a bigger deal back then to have just like creative writing like this, people who are just openly like doing nerdy shit or just open concept stuff. And in a way that wasn't just like kind of an avenue for like Cool Keith style, like, yeah, it's a concept album, but it's really just another way for me to diss you or to do battle rap. Like, ultimately, it's just 15 ways for me to talk about peeing in your hair. Or your jacket.
Yeah, I think the Downfall of Ibliys, a ghetto opera. I'm not sure if that one is also about peeing and pooping or not, based on the title. But I will say, I think Voices, one of the tracks featuring MF, I think there's Voices Part 0, Part 1. I think those ones, I have listened to it. I remember it being really good, but I think those were also featured on some other previous project. I think maybe like the Herbs and Spices project, but I remember those ones being particularly great.
So Doom was the executive producer on that album, along with Grimm, and it was released on Grimm's label. So they were very tight. They also put out the Count Basie album, Day by Day Entertainment.
So that they put out Dwight Spitz, I guess, because I think Act Your Waist Size came out on, I want to say, Fat Beats.
Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah, and then after that, Count Basie had a really interesting road through the industry too, because I think he was actually on a major. Super weird.
Yeah, the first album.
Yeah, Art for like Prizes, one of them.
Because but it took forever for him to make more music after the
and
failure.
Art for Sale, honestly, is one of the weird. It's one of your favorite albums. Diction's two favorite albums are the second Divine Styler record and I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, My Girl Sweatshirt. But yeah, it's right on Styler album as like this went out on a major label. Like that's just in a completely different way though. Like the Divine Styler, like Spiral Walls, that was just like felt like somebody committing career suicide, where with just as much outwardly bizarre shit as they could possibly do. Whereas Art for Sale is just like, it feels more like somebody who, an A&R who didn't really listen to hip hop would listen to that alongside, like, I don't know, like Most Def circa 1996 with like Bahamadia or Bush Babies type stuff and be like, this sounds the same to me, sure. But if you actually listen to it, it's very strange and off kilter, lyrically and compositionally, and very non-mainstream. So the fact that that was out there is very interesting. That a major label can, like, clearly they did not do a very good job pushing it.
No.
I don't think it was necessarily marketable. But there's something very fascinating to me that they were all working together. And all three, I think, were really done dirty by the industry. Like, obviously, we went into this in the first episode that KMD got a super bastards and how they were treated. And, you know, but Life gave Subrock a very raw deal. So
I think something about the industry for non-major labels wasn't very good back then, especially more perhaps in the mid 2000s. But like they would sell like 5,000 copies, and it would be like a major success. Like the stuff you would get on Underground Hip Hop and Sandbox Automatic, which Bandcamp is much better now for underground distribution, and but I can't see how any of these rappers were living off their music with underground releases, because you only had dedicated fans that would order it from the internet to get it, and then you get it mailed to your house. It just wasn't good financially for them now, and I think that's why you see a lot of them making music now, coming back from like 10, 15 years, because, well, you put it out on Bandcamp and you get the money directly to you and without the middleman.
I mean, Bandcamp still, it's not a perfect system. I've heard that, I'm not familiar with the percentages they take. They still do take their slice, but obviously it seems to be a much fairer system than Spotify or Apple, and it definitely facilitates a lot more personal artist to consumer, artist to audience sort of interaction, and just in general seems to be a fairer market, I would say. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Bandcamp. You can go into this on the year-end episode. You can look at my 1,300 purchases on there. So I think that it's definitely opened things up. And I think there is something to the fact that all these like 90s, 2000s rappers were screwed over by the industry or finding second lives on Bandcamp. Like you can go, Godfather Don has a Bandcamp with a bunch of
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing much... it really sucked, because I think the 2000s were a good era for hip hop. Like, I keep seeing this thread coming back, like, oh, it was the dark age for hip hop, and like, but it just was a weird transitional period. The good music was being made, but it wasn't really pushed, and it was only like a very dedicated subset of fans that were listening. Like even MF Doom, you could not find MF Doom albums in your record store. You had to download that shit or be lucky. So, like, yeah, we were looking at King Geedorah, Viktor, Vaughn, Madvillainy as like major albums of that era, but they weren't. They were just popular albums in the underground, but like you had to go on SoulSeek or whatever program we used back then to find these.
Or still use, some of us.
Yeah. No,
as long as I don't get ratioed, though. I really hope I don't get ratioed off of SoulSeek. That would be.
Yes. I hope you don't get ratioed either.
No, you're very, very true about not being able to find this shit in stores, because I remember I forget if I'm rehashing myself from the Lost episode with this story, or maybe in one of the other Doom episodes, but I worked at Borders in 2005, and we didn't stock any Doom albums. And I remember when Special Herbs, the Special Herbs box set came out, I had to actually special order that, which we were able to do as a vendor. We do vendor orders, and it was a pain in the ass to do. And I remember being very disappointed because shout out to Nature Sounds, way to get the track list completely wrong on your cheap ass. You know, I paid $30 for something that looked like it was printed on a Papa John's box, but and you got the fucking track list completely wrong on it. But that's what you had to do if you wanted a Doom album. Like, I don't remember. I think it was like 2008 when I was living in a college town, and an indie record store that stocked Stone's Throw stuff, I think maybe had like Madvillainy because it was on Stone's.
Yeah, no, Madvillainy I got from the store on the day of release. Actually, that one was different because Stone's Throw was a little bigger, but more of the King Geedorah and Viktor Vaughn. As you can see on the Viktor Vaughn album, all the guests, like these people, were about on the same level as Doom in popularity. Like, so not popular, but.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point to make, is that obviously we're coming at this with hindsight. Doom's this legend now. Everybody paid their respects. Yeah. Like, you had all these legends like Lupe, Open Mike Eagle, like everybody up and down giving like Aesop Rock, like in the industry, had something to say about Doom. But back then he was just one of many. Like, he was distinctive, sure, but he was on the same level as a Count Bass, as Grimm, and that's why it was not out like the next album he put out, the Monsta Island Czars album. It was not like he was slumming it by putting out a Posse album where he produced some of the beats and was an MC on one of the songs. It was just like he was an underground rapper. He wasn't a legend. And it kind of feels weird now, I think, for people to look at stuff like this. These are minor works for him, but he was still just a grinding, working MC at this point.
Yeah, because as far as how people heard hip hop, it was all about the mainstream still. Like you had no videos of any underground rappers on TV, or obviously nothing on the radio, and it was just word of mouth on the internet. So you had to be like really deep into hip hop to go to these hip hop forums, and then people would trade names together, and that's how you would find out about Louis Logic or Aesop Rock, MF Doom. So, but the regular hip hop fan at that time, even if they could have enjoyed Doom style, they weren't aware of his music because there was no avenue. Like, we didn't have YouTube then, so it's a whole different era, and you really had to be deep to find out about these great albums of that era.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's another thing where with MF Doom, with the multiple personalities, for an underground MC, I'd imagine that would have been like damn near like career suicide. Like the fact that first you're in the underground, second he's going by all these different projects, all these different names, where, you know, pre-internet being like, you know, as easily accessible, where now we can, you know, just go and rate your music and see aliases or discography, also known as this. I'd imagine back then it would have been harder for people to be like, oh, you know, King Geedorah and then connected to Viktor, Vaughn, connected to Monsta, Czars, connected to Doomsday and Madvillainy. But so I don't know. I can imagine like back then it would have been like really bold move.
For me, that's when I discovered Doom, but but I think the files were labeled AKA MF Doom, so I knew it was all the same person. But Monster Island Czars, I did not listen in 2003. That came later when I revisited, looking for more of the Doom stuff. But King Geedorah and Viktor Vaughn are definitely albums that were buzzing around in the underground.
Okay, right.
Well, so I guess this is as good a time as any to get to the Monster Island Czars album, because Doom had a very, very busy year this year. And everybody remembers Geedorah. Most remember Viktor Vaughn. No one really remembers this album, and for kind of good reason. I mean, I'm sound like I'm slagging a lot, and that's not really fair, because I think if I heard this when I was in this hip-hop phase, which, again, in this phase of my hip-hop listening, which wouldn't have been right at this time, but Madvillainy was the pivotal album. We'll get to that. But when I was like that entry level sort of like Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers is my gospel, Illmatic is my gospel, like that sort of thing. Like, this is the highest aspiration, is just go on blunt rides and rap like this over beats like this and sound like this. Then I would have thought that this is super impressive and not just kind of monochrome and samey, which is how it comes across to me with 2022 eyes a little bit. Like, where it's like I can't point to anything being outwardly bad necessarily. I know Sphinx has some opinions about some of the quote-unquote singing hooks on this, but they don't really bother me as much. But ultimately, it just didn't, with the exception of the Doom verse, and that I have to say, one single, you get one, and it just stands out on this like a goddamn Hope Diamond in like, you know, a haystack. And that does not speak very well of the rest of the rappers, I mean, who are sufficient. But then Doom comes in, and then it's just like, oh, this is what I'm listening to this for. Because if Doom was rapping this way over the rest of these beats, then it would be a great album. And then you get that great album later in the year. Essentially, that's kind of what this is. It's like a dry run for what Geedorah would perfect. And otherwise, it's just kind of music that reminds me of better music. Like, you have a guy who's like the world's best great value Kirkland Mos Def. That's the best thing I can say about him.
I listened to it yesterday to prepare, and the main issue I had was with the production.
Yes.
Well, not that the rappers are amazing, but if you the few Doom beats and you recognize them instantly, I didn't even look at the credits, and you just hear, okay, this is a Doom beat. This is one of the better songs on the album. But some of the other ones are kind of like the cheap underground sound that we at that time. So, and I cannot tell any of these rappers apart. It feels like the first time I'm listening to a Wu-Tang album, the first time is like, who is everyone? I don't know anyone. No one really stood apart. Like, they're not bad rappers, but they're not like, oh my God, who is this guy? I need more albums from him. No, none of them.
It's 36 Chambers if everybody was You Got It, Master Killer, and nobody was a Ghostface.
Pretty much.
It took me years to figure who was what. But yeah, I was fairly young when I first heard Wu-Tang, but it was so complicated to tell them apart. Now it's so easy. They're all very distinctive. I don't know how. But that's how I felt when listening to revisiting this album for the first time in it's almost since it came out, probably 2004, 2005. I listened to it the first time, and this was probably the second time yesterday. So non-essential, but not so bad. It could have been better. Like if Doom did all the beats, and if he was more present, and maybe cut some of the songs, well, like half of the songs, it could have been a more interesting album. And maybe there was more plans. Like if Doom wasn't like after the Danger Doom album, we didn't hear much from Doom. So maybe there was like this expansion of getting all these Czars solo albums with on his label and stuff like that. Maybe that was like the start of something big that just never came around. So this is kind of like the Flip Mode Squad album.
Well, I don't. Oh my god, I forgot about the Flip Mode album for good reason. I don't know if you remember, but there was a point in like later period Doom where he actually opened something called Metal Face Academy, where I guess it was like a school for rappers. Where I think it was just basically he was like, pay me some money and you can go put on a mask and do a show pretending you're me. But, which is like the best, funniest Doom grift ever. But I think maybe, yeah, you're right. There was something more along like down the line that never materialized. Maybe like I like the narrative that the second Viktor album was when Doom started realizing, I can do whatever and get the bag for it. Cool. But maybe this is the beginning of that. I don't know, because it's like Doomsday but I don't think so, because I think we're still in the era where Doom is like a grind, like I said, a working, grinding MC, and I think that this was just work for him, and I think that he was using what clout he had at the time to put his friends on. Like, there's a lot of people in this collective, you can't really tell any of them apart. I think that, yeah, if it was, you see, like, there might have been bigger plans. Like, if you look at the ROM credits, Percy Carey is listed as an EP on this. That's Grimm's government name. There's no Grimm on here, but he could have been on here. I think he might have been in jail at this point. I don't know, or otherwise indisposed. There's no like Count Bass guest appearance or anything, but there are ways that this could have been better. Like there was. It's called "Take Me to Your Leader" by King Geedorah. Like anything you would do to improve this album is done and fully realized on the Geedorah album. Like it has the Doom beats, it has the Doom presence, it has the use of the Monsta Island Czars at their best. It has like, Trunks on Lockjaw. It has that, like, it just distills everything you might like about this and puts it in a context that makes it work so much better. This is just like a rough sketch for what could work better in the future. So absolutely not a bad album, but could not feel less essential to me.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree with Diction. I think the worst part about this, I think the rapping, I'd say, the worst part about this is definitely the production. He has that, really cheap, low budget, underground hip hop, post, 90s boom bap, sort of sound. So yeah, most of the production I think handled by X-Ray. It's really, really just does not stand out. And yeah, definitely the Doom beats stand out there. I'll say, generally it is very, Wu-Tang, side project kinda, but it is geared a little bit more towards the underground, where I think around this time they're also embracing a lot of like the more a little bit more of the abstract sort of offbeat style of rhyming, where like really wordy style of rhyming, kind of like Addams Family or kind of Company flow. And I'd say Rodan was probably the highlight for me, after of course MF Doom. I'd say Rodan is one where I was like every one verse.
Actually, yeah, that's not. I wasn't being fair to Rodan. Rodan, he's got a lot more practice. You can tell Rodan is a lot more practiced than a lot of these MCs, and his verses do stand out.
Apparently, he goes back. Yeah, apparently he goes back to KMD like 98, 99, but I'm not 88, 89, but I'm not.
Yeah, he wasn't on the album, but he was a member of the group before they recorded the album. But that's like teenage years, because Doom was born in 71. So if Rodan is the same age, he was around like 17 years old. So they go way back.
Yeah, which and I definitely thought he was a stand-up bit. Everyone else, you're like, like that guy kind of sounds like a Mos Def-ish. That guy definitely sounds like a Ghostface, and those other guys just sound like generic East Coast hardcore rappers. But when Doom comes in, I think the track "My Client," it is like a breath of fresh air. Breath of fresh air, and it almost seems like he's kind of making fun of them, because he says bombing and calming the savage with above average beats or something like that. I was like, that is absolutely true, because it's the only above average beat on this album.
As we'll get to on the second Viktor album, Doom has no compulsion of going in there and just, if he doesn't feel like your shit is up to par, he will like insult your production on the song you paid him to rap on.
Oh yeah,
he's a bitter old dude. Like, and that's part of what's endearing about him is his crankiness. And I guess that's why I don't necessarily mind the production as much as you guys, as much of a fault as the sameness of the rapping, because it's like, that's part of Doom's aesthetic. I mean, yes, I agree. The production, the X-ray beats are a real step down from the Doom stuff. And I think it's because he's trying to emulate Doom so obviously, like the templates, and just inferior. But
it doesn't even sound close to it. Like,
to me, at least MF Doom manages to find like really, really good samples. You know, some of them are like obscure, some of them are obvious. And then, you know, laces that into a track. But I don't think with these ones there was. But there was definitely, you know, where he samples movie clips and things like that, very similar to Doom.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think ultimately, I'm trying to think about the obscure stuff we're going to cover in this. I would probably direct people more to the Grimm album than this one. If you're going to pick out one, like, I probably haven't heard this, because I assume anybody listening to this is going to have heard the big four that we're talking about. And it's more about discussing what we love about them and new insights as opposed to pointing people towards them. Because I'm sorry, if you've not listened to Madvillainy, you can't listen to the podcast. You're on this, like, what are you fucking doing? Like, MF Doom is the first voice you hear in the fucking theme music. Why are you listening to this podcast? Like, it's literally the first words on Madvillainy. So I don't think that we're doing anybody like you should go listen to that Madvillain album, like that real obscure underground hip hop album. But yeah, I don't think.
But it was
really into Geedorah, I think you might find something to like here. Like, if you're looking for more of that type of sound, but just be aware that aside from Mike Line, there's nothing even approaching the level of quality.
For sure.
Yeah. And I'd say the other thing is that, you know, it's called Escape from Monsta Island. They're called the Monsta Island Czars. They're all named after monsters. But honestly, like, when you look into the lyrics, most of it is just like, you know, typical like hardcore stuff that, you know, they talk about, you know, guns this, beat this, you know, beat up this person and you know, battle this person. It's, which I know even like some of the Geedorah stuff, it is battle rap, but it's still laced with, you know, all the references, and, you know, it's peppered with, you know, metaphors and things like that. This one's literally,
why
only like the, yeah, like only like the, it's only like when Doom comes in that Doom actually makes references to like monsters. Like, guys, I thought that was the whole MO of this album, but it's not. Like, all the other guys are just sort of like on some other shit, honestly.
Yeah, it's like an Insane Clown Posse album that doesn't mention like circuses or rides or clowns. Like,
yeah, it's like, where's the theme?
False advertising.
Where's my clowns?
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, feel free to pass this one up, but if you're really into Geedorah, I'd say give it a shot. But if you're really into Geedorah, why not listen to the genuine article of Take Me to Your Leader, King Geedorah, Spring Chicken Eater, ID'd as the ringleader.
Yeah, this one's again. Well, we already had Doomsday establishing the Doom persona and style, but this one I think takes it a little bit further with all of his. There's a lot of features on this album, but he does all of the beats, and I think they're really excellent. All of the beats on this album, it's such a good listen front to back. Every song is very strong. He doesn't. I don't think he raps on all the songs, but doesn't matter to me. I think it might bother someone when their favorite rapper puts out an album without them rapping in all the songs, but I think it makes you appreciate the presence even more, because here I'm not there all the time, but when I'm there, listen to me more. It gets less overwhelming, I think. So yeah, just a great album. Nothing really bad to say about it. And yeah, it's essential for if you want to get into Doom outside of Madvillainy. This perhaps not number 2, but not far behind.
I really like what you said about how he places his raps on this album, because I remember that being a criticism of it, is that, I think this comes up in the Pitchfork review, and I'm not going to be one of those people who's like, oh, well, Pitchfork, blah, blah, because I think that's a really hollow criticism. Also, the whole idea of just like Pitchfork is this amorphous thing that's always the same person as opposed to individual reviewers, which was especially not true then. I think now they're more of a consensus machine. Then they were definitely individualistic reviewers. But I remember a lot of people were echoing the point where it was like, well, it's a great Doom album, but you don't hear enough Doom. Which, first of all the raps on here, the features included, are great. Like, it's a much, much higher level rapping out of these dudes than, there's not Weed Carrier rapping than on the Monsta Island Czars album. There's a reason you know this and you don't know the Monsta Island Czars album. But to your point about where, like, not hearing Doom all the time, think about when you hear Doom. You hear him at the beginning, you hear him at the end, and you hear him under his own name once for 49 seconds on the final hour, where it's him as, this is also him writing, like, serious lore. Like, this is him really weaving the character. Like, Doomsday was like an inception of him doing this, where it's like just him doing character work, like, on a level that nobody else really had in hip-hop before. Like, yes, Keith with Dr. Octagon and stuff, but again, I kind of harped on that. I think Keith was just kind of doing that on a more surface level, whereas I think Doom really does it on a more detailed level, where if he's a different character, he's going to rap differently about different things. And the more you listen to it, the more nuances you pick up on. So Doom on the final hour is different than Geedorah on Phasers, or especially Geedorah on the fine print. And then if you read the fine print, what's the big deal? You start to, once you've listened to it, something like the song that I absolutely cannot say the title of that leads into the fine print really comes into focus. That what the ultimate comment of this album is, that it's not just a purely aesthetic decision to talk about, like, to use this monster movie imagery, he's actually making a comment on society, and just more and more levels, more and more layers. And I'm sorry, Doom also shows up on Antimatter, which kind of spoils my whole theory about the final hour. But an Antimatter is a bit of an outlier in terms of, like, I think that actually might have been a single before this. This or that, or No Snakes Alive, I think might have been like singles that were from other projects. And those two songs feel a bit like outliers, but they are integrated very well. And they're perfect songs. Like, the way he rhymes on No Snakes Alive is so fucking cool to me. Like, that's the song to play for people who are like, Doom only raps one way. No, he doesn't. Fuck you.
So, that one was released on Big Data, which is Ninja Tune, the hip hop sub label, which is weird because I was actually following this label because I was a big Ninja Tune head circa 97, 98. But I sort of stopped checking out their stuff by the time this one came out. I did catch it, but not because of the Big Data connection. So, and this one technically had better distribution. Ninja Tune you could find in your maybe dedicated music store more than other labels, but you still didn't have any radio play at all, or video play, or that. This is not something I heard outside of the internet. At the time, it was really just among underground hip hop fans that were aware of this album's existence, at least from my personal point of view. I maybe some other people heard about it in different ways in 2003. I mean, but no, this wasn't a big deal in the sense of how we see it now. Like, if you look on RYM, it's probably the most rated album of 2003.
So yeah, 8,328 ratings. I'm looking at the page right now.
It's a lot.
Yeah, so just popping up the list right now.
Also, now we're going to do one of our favorite games on the show. It's where I look at where it places on the year-end list and yell at all the albums that is better than that are over it.
But the most rated hip-hop album of 2003 is Viktor Vaughn. Then Outkast. Then King Geedorah.
Shout out to all the epic gamers who got Silent Hill 3 that far above it.
And actually,
oh great, number 10 is the fucking Return of the King soundtrack. Are you fucking kidding me? Like this fucking sub-Hans Zimmer crap. Like go fuck yourself. Okay, 392 for the Return of the King soundtrack.
Make sure always filter out, always exclude soundtracks when you're looking at charts.
They're playing a great soundtrack. I wouldn't do that, but like I want to filter out Tolkien from life in all mediums.
To get back to my point,
that's interesting. Holy crap!
Diction is trying to reroute this.
Yeah, so if you look at, because I sorted it by popularity and hip hop. You have Black Album with less ratings than King Geedorah. Get Rich or Die Trying with less rating than King Geedorah. But this was not
thing ever.
This was not the reality of 2003. Like
it wasn't. Yeah. Like actually,
50 Cent. Everybody
more people playing the Black Album than King Geedorah in 2003.
Yeah. Of course, like because these things you could not miss, and everybody knew who 50 Cent was, or Jay-Z, obviously. But MF Doom, and if you brought up MF Doom into a regular conversation and you say he wears a mask, it's like, what the fuck type of nerd shit is that? And it would be
if you bring up wearing a mask, people in 2022, a lot of people around here say, what type of nerd shit is that?
No, but that because he was sort of associated with this nerdy, but then again, Wu-Tang was nerdy too. They were just a little bit more violent. I think which made it pass a little bit better, but like the Kung Fu samples, that was nerdy. But still, it's not a reflection of the reality of how things were. In 2003, King Geedorah was not more popular than Louis Logic.
Yeah, no, I actually remember when I started breaking into listening to underground hip hop, Cinematic by Louis Logic was something that got plugged to me a lot, way more than MF Doom. So, and you can break into the racial politics of that however you want, I think. But that like something like Cinematic or even the Def Jux stuff was way more popular than Doom. Like Doom was definitely viewed as, you're must like comic books, huh? So
yeah, Def Jux actually was kind of the sort of the kings of the underground. Like it wasn't on the radio either or video at all, but among the underground acts being pushed, these were the first ones. A$AP Rock, LP, with his first solo album, Mr. Lift. Yeah, Cannibal Ox too. But I think Doom kind of took
his tail wagging because he's going to get to talk about Anaconda in a second.
Oh no, I doubt they were that popular. I think they were like really, really niche.
Yeah, well, the thing with Anticon is that for all the hip hop sites that I would visit and discuss hip hop with others, they were never mentioned. We talked about like some really obscure rappers that you would never hear about anymore, but Gel and these are names that I never saw once. So their fan base was more, I think, from alternative rock fans that were trying to get to justify hip hop. Oh, hip hop is good when it's different. So not to start an argument on our appreciation for it, but Doom, on the other hand, was part of these conversations among A$AP Rock fans. But I think his appeal went a little bit beyond A$AP Rock because A$AP Rock was very, very divisive. Not everybody liked him, and he was really sort of the poster boy for the too much words underground rapper, too complex, no melody in his beats, and
my old friend Raven Mack would say he called that term paper rap, possibly in direct reference to A$AP Rock, which always makes me think about, shout out to last night's episode, the Cannabis Man breaking out his reams of paper when he wants to do his freestyles. So term paper rap is what I always think of. But yeah, Aesop Rock and Sage Francis were the two names I always would associate with that. Personal Journals by Sage Francis in particular. And I think Doom was, I'm sorry, I kind of steamrolled you, but I think the reason that Doom, did you say as is tradition?
No, he said that's good or that's okay, something like that. As is tradition. You were about to say the word tradition. What?
No, I meant that
manifested itself.
Your transition was good. Like, even if you cut me off,
transition.
It was
I just heard the word good.
Yeah, I heard the wrong thing from the wrong person. You were complimenting me. Diction was complimenting me, and I heard an insult from Caleb.
which I also didn't insult you.
Yeah, no, you said nothing. But no, I feel like Doom, in terms of underground rap, actually is like he's doing the same sort of quote unquote nerdy stuff, but he does this with like this, lovable is maybe a stretch, but like, gruff punchline style that's couched in like different reference points. Like he's this like slob who watches TV and will talk about it. Like he makes these low culture reference points as opposed to just being like trying to quote unquote cram so much into it like Aesop and Sage. And that's what made him stand out. And I think that's what gained him a following that wasn't the same following as those, not necessarily just the comic book stuff, which also gained him a following too. He was also unapologetically nerdy.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's a really good point, because like what separates Doom from like, because like, Doom, he is pretty much like as abstract as, he can be as abstract as some people like LP, Def Jux, Anicon, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, exactly what you said. What sort of separates him is that his flow that he definitely, especially like stepped up and established around this time, like starting with this album. His flow was a bit different on Operation Doomsday, but starting on this album going forward, where it's like very, in pocket, and it's a very recognizable flow. Very steady paced. He sometimes raps a bit slow and faster, but generally speaking, he raps in a very steady paced flow. It's very much like da 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 da. Then he might take a pause, da da da. But it's very abstract, but it's very neat and organized in a way. Where I think someone like Anicon and Def Jux, where you got Anicon with someone like Cloud Dead, which is just incredibly off the wall, rhyming completely off beat, with the beats that are completely, whatnot.
Or even something like the album we discussed, Taste of Rain, on the Anicon versus Mac episode, like the flows on that. Or somebody like Slug too. Like Slug's a much more traditional rapper than those guys, but I still think Slug is a lot more like free form and wordy than Doom is. Like I think Doom is very good at like fitting those sort of abstract concepts, like the character play and everything, into like more strict, like. He's oddly for something so abstract. He's oddly disciplined.
Yeah, and yeah, he's always he always keeps one foot in like the battle, in the traditions of like battle rap. Like pretty much like 80, 90, more like 70% of his material it's still braggadocious. It's still battle rhymes. So I think that's another thing that sort of makes people gravitate more towards him than other like abstract or experimental alternative hip hop artists, whatever, is that he always has one foot in the traditionalist with his flow and with his battle context, battle rhymes. He always has one foot always steeped into that traditionalist mindset, which, makes him a bit more palatable compared to some of the other weirdos around the time.
I think Slug was kind of add an appeal to a bigger appeal than your average underground rapper. The atmosphere was a big deal in that era. After God Loves Ugly, that I think Slug was also like in the Sage Francis, Aesop Rock sort of poster rapper for underground hip hop. But they're all different. Like if you compare their styles, like even Slug and Sage Francis are they can get into more emotional topics, but Sage Francis is a lot more wordy with it. and Slug doesn't have such a big vocabulary, and it's more like direct, but it's kind of an asshole too, which was the appeal.
Well, what's interesting to me is
he hates himself.
Like there was a whole narrative where people like, I remember all the way, like I had a subscription to Spin magazine at the time, and these were the rappers you heard about in Spin, was Slug, Stage Francis, Aesop Rock. Like these were the ones that they were writing about, LP. But then you go online later on Pitchfork and stuff, and I feel like the reactionary mindset to be cool was they were writing about Dipset and 50 and trying to like shoehorn their own narratives into it. It's like, oh no, we like this kind of rap because we're tuned in. But I think ultimately what's getting lost in the discussion is like there's a very superficial reading in both cases. In like the Spin magazine case, it's like, oh, we don't like that kind of bling rap. We don't like that gangsters and guns rap. And then on Pitchfork side, it's like, well, we don't like that kind of nerdy term paper rap.
Well, I think
Pitchfork, you're not really listening to it. You're just kind of trying to control the perception of how people think you listen to rap, because in some ways you're afraid people are going to judge you for listening to rap.
But Pitchfork was not relevant in 2003, at least from a hip-hop perspective. I never heard of that site until I think 2005. And it was certainly not somewhere I would go to for any hip-hop recommendations.
No, I don't think that they were trying to influence the hip-hop communities, or quote-unquote hip-hop community, rap community, whatever. They were not like the smoking section. But I think they were trying to influence like the indie community's perception of how they listen to hip-hop by like, we're going to give an 8.5 to Purple Haze or something. Not because necessarily they had, maybe they did, I don't know. Some of those Sean Fennessy reviews are fucking terrible.
Yeah, but they were more into, I think the way you're describing Spin is on point with how Pitchfork were at that time. Looking at some of their older reviews, they were more into the sort of alternative hip hop, if you want. Like, I hate that term, but
trap stuff. Because I do remember when I started listening to like, you know, a real hard diet of hip hop, that it was a joke that all of a sudden Pitchfork is giving high ratings to Cameron and Pitchfork is giving high ratings to this and that. But then they'll like, they made a hard, like maybe they did in 2003, like give high ratings to Def Jux and Anacon. I can't.
Because the Non-Profits album got a great review in Pitchfork. I didn't know Pitchfork then, but that's one of those older hip hop reviews that are still up from them, and that album got high ratings, and it's very much underground with Sage Francis rapping.
I just remember a lot of the Sean Fennessy type reviews being really cringy, like culminating when they did
absolutely shitting on Sean Fennessy. What did he do to you? God damn.
His old reviews. That's the name I associate with it. The two names I associate with being like, now I'm really like, I was trying to jokingly get canceled yesterday, and then today I'm going to actually have like real journalists being like, my friend recommended me this podcast and all you did was shit on me. What the fuck are you doing? But I just remember like generally, I'm probably misattributing this, but Pitchfork did like a annotation, like they were a pre-rap genius. They did full annotations for Drought 3, explaining all of the complex Lil Wayne references on Drought 3, like front to back. And it's just like,
that's far, right? What year was that? Like late
2007. That's 2007.
Okay.
But I think that was like, you know, the nadir of that. And there's a word I'm butchering. But that was like the bottom. I think they were building that for a while, where they were giving like, you know, good ratings to albums that necessarily just like being contrarian assholes, essentially pitchforking. Like, I don't know how we got on this topic, but I think it's more about how like like Doom, like the initial thing that I had that was good before I got into really tired RYM talking points about Pitchfork was that Doom established a following in the underground because he was doing a lot of the same abstract stuff, but in a more relatable sort of way.
Yeah, I'll say about this time, like around the 2000s, it was also like a really interesting time for hip hop. In that, you know, you had the shiny suit jig era in the late 90s, and then a lot of the underground starting from the late 90s with a lot of the dudes that you named. They were reacting to the mainstream and the popularity of mainstream, which is reflected a lot in the lyrics, especially this album, Take Me to Your Leader, which there's a lot of commentary about the rap game and the industry and a lot was probably the central theme in a way. But there's a lot of direct reactions and reactions to the reactions. So it was a really interesting time, especially in the underground, where it was like reactions to the mainstream and people trying to figure out their place in the rap game, both rappers and the audience, and music journalists and all that sort of stuff. There it was a bit of I think, like you said, Diction, it's a transitional period, but also a bit of an awkward period too. So with this album, there is, I did pick up a lot of that, where they're commenting a lot of stuff. It's refreshing that it's not as much, fuck the mainstream as some other albums around this time. Notoriously were. But yeah, still like.
But that's how we felt, though. Like,
yeah,
because yes, it's cringy to say real hip hop, because we're so tired of hearing it. But as hip hop fans, when we were seeing where mainstream hip hop was going, and then the rappers were saying, "Fuck this shit. This is the real shit."
Yeah,
we related to that. At least me and my friends, we all did, because that's how we felt. There's like, no, we like good hip hop. Fuck this shit on TV. Which, well, not all of it was bad. We did like a bunch of mainstream rappers, but there's a certain type that was like Ja Rule, for example. Ja Rule was fucking big in 2003 from his previous hits, and we were like, fuck this shit. That's not hip hop.
I mean, I do have to say our podcast position is ultimately pro Ja Rule, because he is the only person who in recent times has actually made a gulag for the bourgeoisie. So
it's true. It's true. We stand Ja Rule in this house. Just don't listen.
Not at all for his terrible music.
Yes, don't listen
to the fact that he made a gulag that the bourgeoisie actually willingly went to. And
yes.
But it's true that a lot of the stuff that you hear now, like real hip hop, underground, fuck the mainstream, it sucks. It's a tired cliche. It's not interesting to hear, but at that time it made sense.
yeah.
I mean, there isn't really much fuck the mainstream isms in hip hop anymore, because so many lesser known rappers really
blow up.
Well, I don't even mean that. I just mean in terms of either may or may not necessarily take inspiration, but definitely look at bigger rappers and have positive attitudes toward them, or say, oh, I think what X artist does is really cool or interesting, or even though it sounds way different than me. I mean, I think someone like while he's big in theory, I think someone like Earl Sweatshirt is a good example, because Earl listens to, and some other smaller artists too, people like Mavi listen to, and I only know this because I follow them on social and stuff, but talk about a lot of different kinds of hip hop that doesn't necessarily sound like anything that they make, but they're still very interested in that hip hop and what certain artists that are bigger than them like do, and they'll big up some of their songs and blah blah blah. I mean, I'm not seeing what they post all the time, but I do see it in passing. I find that interesting.
I think they probably also grew up with those popular artists, so they have an appreciation for both what's in the mainstream, what's in the underground, whatever, and they can the newer generation of people definitely much more open.
Yeah, so, I like that you mentioned Earl, because I think there's a direct through line from Doom to Odd Future, and in general, just making, like, I think we covered this a bit in the Jermaine's episode, where it's like Doom made it cool to be weird, possibly to the point where people use weirdness as an affectation, like where it's gone all the way around to you're eccentric, like it's almost like you're like a fucking Wes Anderson character. It's an affectation you're wearing on your sleeve as a substitute for an actual personality. But it's, I think that a lot of what makes Doom great is that he was on it, like, again, with the comic book shit and the weird references and the fact that he looks the way he does and doesn't care. Like, he raps about that too. He's not like or these rappers are stripping males, out of work jerks, and they shut down Chippendales from food. Yeah, like, he was that's a shot at Ja Rule right there. That's a shot at Ja Rule. That's a shot at 50 Cent. That's a shot at the rapper image. and he made it cool to, or at least palatable on the way to being cool, to be an outcast.
Yeah, like it says, it looks, this is on a late album, it looks like a black Wookiee when he let his beard grow weird. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's a lot of self-deprecation and like awareness, wear a mask like a tarded helmet and cover the raw flesh and things like that. Yeah.
Catch him in the pub. You won't see the villain in no damn gym. Catch him in the pub with the grub stain.
What do you think Pitchfork gave Take Me to Your Leader?
It's like 7.3 or something?
8.0.
They gave it a 9 in 2003.
Okay.
And it was probably written by Sean Fennessy to make me look like a dick.
It was Mark Martelli.
Oh, okay.
Never heard of it.
I don't know who that is. But I pulled it out from, because it's on their website right now, but I pulled up in Wayback Machine to see if it was still the same there. Like they didn't just change it to make them make themselves look better. But no, it's the real review from 2003.
Oh,
so you see, that goes back to my point that Pitchfork was.
I just think, like, your point supports my point. Is that I think at some point they made a pivot to they switched to more ignorant rap. Not that it's a bad thing.
I would argue that they were probably the only outlet that was covering that stuff fairly, though, at the time. That would be my... I've been silent on this because I don't disagree with Patrick's point about how it might seem like a cynical decision, but also when you look at the coverage of a lot of rap music, I mean, especially in the 2000s, when how many outlets were really covering rap music? Like
OK Player was covering...
And OK Player's not going to give Kill a Season a fair appraisal.
My point is, like, I feel like, and I was extremely young in the 2000s, so I don't know about rap journalism as in the early mid 2000s, etc. But I only feel like in the 2010s did rap journalism with regards to grading mainstream hip hop. I mean, obviously vis-a-vis southern rappers, blah 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 blah. Like a fair shot in praising it was kind of a reaction to, hey, we fucked up decades ago by slandering this stuff that wasn't Outkast. Like, I think that's what it was. So, and while something like Dipset isn't Southern hip hop, that's a whole different story. But there were people, I'm sure, in the 2000s that were like, oh, this is not like the real hip hop that matters. Not necessarily even real hip hop, but like, the stuff that is important to me personally.
But it was all broken down into if you had an outlet that would praise Southern hip hop, which there was none, but they would have been dissing East Coast Def Jux stuff. Right. Or the ones that are praising Def Jux, they won't like Southern hip hop. So it was all broken down into these scenes, and everyone praising their own scene. But like as a general,
forever though, right? Like it's always territorialism, like no matter what.
Nowadays, Nowadays, not so much, which is a really.
It doesn't matter where you're from nowadays.
Yeah. Which I mean, that's just like the internet in the last 10 plus years, right? Has been the bridge of all gaps. I mean, we've talked about on the pod before about how like regionalism hasn't existed, and how we're all for the better.
Yeah, and that goes back to my point from a few episodes ago that the kids are actually getting it right. Like now we don't have dumb territorial beefs just because you were born in another spot of land than somebody else.
And I mean, to talk about like younger listeners, because of the accessibility and availability of music that was previously super underground, have like revitalized that music through places. I mean, forums like RYM, or just even in more popular spaces like MF Doom on Twitter is way bigger than you would think MF Doom has any right to be. Like if you probably heard him when it was happening, 15
because we talked a lot about the underground and mainstream separation of that time, but now it's all irrelevant. Like you open up YouTube, you open up Spotify, and you search for those names, and it will come up just as much as any rapper on a major label. Yeah, there might be ads and stuff, but music consumption and distribution has just changed so much in those 20 years It's a whole different world, but I think the emphasis that I put on mainstream versus underground back then is really important because it really separated worlds. It's just not the same.
It isn't, and it shaped who Doom was as an artist too. I think that's important. Like,
yes,
I mean, part of like people reject a lot of Doom's later work from Born Like This onward because he wasn't fun anymore. But you have to realize that the world made this man bitter. Like, it was the industry, it was the segregation of the industry, it was the fact that he lost his brother. And I think that a lot of the abstractness, like the hiding behind a mask, the hiding behind these characters and everything is a reaction to that. And part of that was the way the industry was that way too, Rule 4080, which it all still exists. Like, you know, you're still making peanuts off streaming, even if you do well on Bandcamp, but it was different. And the underground separation from the mainstream was different and harsher then, for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of it is reflected within the lyrics of Doom, but also like his style and the style of his peers, where they went against the grain on purpose.
Right, and times, what's more anti-mainstream than, like, you know, in 2003 your Ja Rule videos than something that's echoing like 1950s kaiju Toho fucking like.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you were talking earlier, Diction, about how a lot of hip-hop concept albums are very loose. I would say this is the opposite. Like, all the albums we're going to talk about, like Doom as a concept album artist, he pulled that off super well. Like, in his act, when it's him guiding the concept. Like,
yeah, it was more in general, not a shot at Doom himself. Yeah, Doomsday.
I wasn't saying it was, but
Doomsday works as a concept, but does Madvillainy have a concept? Yeah, it's hip-hop villains, but
so much. Madvillainy, I was actually more referring to this in Viktor. Food is more of a loose concept, and Madvillainy is just him rapping well, to be honest.
Yeah, to me, I think the concepts are a bit. I think the other thing is, like, a lot of people think when they think concept album, they think narrative concepts. Where I think these are more like thematic concepts, where it's not just, you know, it's not just a narrative from track 1 to track 13. You know, it's more peppered in, it's flavored, it's integrated here and there in spots, but it is still broken up by, you know, regular battle raps, regular verses about completely different stuff. But, you know, with the, I think especially with Doom, it's the samples that really tie everything together, like stitch things together into making it cohesive.
To your point about that, I want to ask the whole room a question. What did you think the first time you heard the Monster Zero?
The what?
The 5-minute sound collage. Like, did you skip it? Do you like it? I mean, the first time you heard it.
That's on what?
I like it. I would probably put it in the top half of the album. Like, and I liked it.
And we'll talk about this more with Food, where it's like people, especially at the time, I feel like, did not care for Doom's tendency to do that with his albums.
Yeah, we'll get to MF Food. But yeah, I like it, and I like how he uses the samples to reference like MF Doom's characters and productions in pretty slick ways. I really like that.
I like the instrumental hip hop. So I had no problems with the instrumental parts or sample movie theme samples put together. That was fine with me. That was more like a DJ Shadow thing.
Yeah.
So the limited artists that were doing that at that time. So that was right in line. Like, yeah, give me a dope beat, a dope drum, and you can put anything on it, and it works. That's always been one of the rules of hip hop, is like, if you put a good drum, you can do anything and it works.
I mean, you got to be careful. You're talking to the person who got drumless as a genre on the site.
I was gonna say. Speaking of drums, I think I got to get a criticism out for this album. I want to say I really like this album, but I don't love it. And there's two things. One, some of these rappers, I mean, I don't know. I think that.
Okay, what verses specifically do you not like?
Gigan. I don't like that. I don't like. I'm not sure. I don't really like his verses, and his voice is annoying.
Fast Lane
it's terrible.
Or
Crazy World.
Crazy World.
Great
I see
beat.
That. You have a thing about rappers with that kind of voice, because you don't like a lot of Kendrick or Wayne stuff, and I feel like that's the same. I think you just don't like that kind of nasal delivery.
I really like Aesop,
which is
Rock,
weird coming from an
Danny
Anaconda
Brown,
fan.
but
That's real.
Yeah,
coming
and
from
those
a fucking
one, yeah.
Anaconda fan, by the way.
To me, I don't know, and Lil B has that, but I don't know. It's really hit and miss for me. But to me, it's just, and I think Biolante and you guys are gonna hate me, but Trunks was alright, but Hassan Chop, I feel like
Violent is actually curious.
Yeah, he's curious, which I do like some of his other features, but I feel like not all of the rappers can match MF Doom's skill and lyricism or his eccentricity, like a combination of the two or one of the other. I feel like the rappers in the middle of the album, like Little Psy, Star, the Empress, Jet Jaguar, Rodan, and Mr. Fantastic just crush it. Like they match. Like they're amazing. Like I think No Snakes Alive, which was I think already released in the MF EP, one of the best hip hop songs probably ever.
Mr. Fantastic's verse is like, I could argue that's the favorite moment on the album at some points. Like I wouldn't say now, but at some points when I lived with this album, that was my favorite moment. The way he comes in and out on that is just amazing. Also, I think I've mentioned this on the show before, is that I like to tell it, like one of the funniest things was on the Stones Throw message board back in the day, people would say that Mr. Fantastic was just Mad Lib with his voice slowed down instead of pitched up. So it was like,
no, it's Count Basie.
Some people say it's Count Basie. I don't think it sounds. I don't think it's either of them. I don't think it sounds anywhere close to either of them.
It's actually
like the rhyming. The rhyming is not even similar. Sorry. Is it actually Count Basie? Because he rhymes completely differently.
No one knows, and I like it that way. I don't want to know who Mr. Fantastic is. I like it that way.
Yeah, so. And I was gonna say the other thing is just the drums. I feel like MF Doom's production, his strengths are definitely within his crate digging rather than his production. Like I think he finds some amazing samples, like whether it is from like soul or funk records, rock, or whether it is just like literally just a clip from like a VHS of like a Godzilla movie. Like he has a fantastic ear for that. My only thing is like, sometimes his drums, they feel very like basic and untouched, like nothing extra has been done to them. And I feel like if you use like drum breaks rather than like, tapping the drums out like on a keyboard or whatever it is, like a drum machine, I think that would have worked better. But I don't know, that's a fairly minor complaint, because like, oh man, the Next Levels, No Snakes Alive, Antimatter, the Fine Print, Final Hour, just Fast Lane, like Phasers, all of them, like still like amazing.
Phasers is front to back one of my favorite rap performances of all time. Like the way he just goes into that is like, it's such a gorgeous layered instrumental, and the way he balances like punchlines with like deeper statements, like. And maybe this just hits me harder because I just had a kid, but the lineup nowadays, it's amazing, raising young. Like, just that kind of puts the whole album in perspective once you get the bigger picture. And then he marries it again to like that low culture punchline that gives the song its title, rule number 1, keep your phasers on stun, which is like, keep your head on a swivel, be alert. But it's also a Star Trek punchline. It goes back to Doom being a fucking lazy couch potato. Like,
yeah. And even with that song, I love that line. And he even like, he has sound effects of lasers, and he mentions like electric, like King Geedorah shooting electricity, and then he mentions like zip, like ZZ Top or something like that. Yeah. So there's a lot of like just really, really nice stuff they did peppers in. And also speaking of just children and that, I love Star's verse in Next Level is also one of the best, where she like goes into like an extended like pregnancy metaphor, like she talks about like Hicks and Braxton's contraction, delivery, reaction, started with a passion, and then born with the umbilical cords, strapped to cords. Just like amazing, like some like excellent performances on this album.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then just last thing, No Snakes Alive, like I already said, but geez, like the speed up of the tempo, the beat, and the like MF Grimm is incredible. Like the alliteration.
Favorite Rodan by far. Anything I've heard from them, easy, like no competition.
Yeah, and then Rodan, I think, has one of the best verses on the entire album. Like, oh man, like it's really, really good, and like really like pointed criticism on pretty much just like fake rappers and which was typical of the time, but that just like the way he does it is just incredible.
I know they were not your favorites, and then I'll shut up after this so Caleb and Alice can get some time to actually say some shit. But I just have to defend real quick. Crazy World and I Wonder, I think those are essential to the album because they're such nakedly emotional, counterpoint to a lot of the other stuff on there. Like, I think you kind of need those songs to just kind of give balance, contrast to the other doom raps. And I think their sincerity kind of lampshades the album's themes, and they kind of highlight a lot of the emotive qualities in Doom's beats. Like, I know one of them is... No, I was about to say it's wild. High Sop is the special herb, but that's actually on a later Doom album. But I think those are beats that wouldn't really work in any other context, but for those raps, they work perfectly. So, and for those rappers too. I wouldn't want to hear a whole album of those, but the way they're placed in the album, especially the way I Wonder ends, that's like a gut punch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's an incredible beat. Yeah. To me, it's just like the mixing, like on some tracks you can hear the rappers really well. Then on other tracks like Crazy World, you can't just they're just too, I don't know, buried within the beat. But yeah, still like the production is like the beats themselves, stellar. Like I Wonder, like with the strings and everything, is just it's gorgeous. But anyway, Caleb, I think it's your time.
Sure, no problem. I think my favorite is Fast Lane. I think I had talked about that song before on the pod, but yeah, Fast Lane is. I think the opening tracks are kind of my favorites on here, which always stuck with me. I agree with Pat that the Fine Print is another highlight. I don't listen to this. This was one that I had listened to a good amount in like high school, because it was kind of like the different Doom album, like not the one that like everybody knew. So I kind of had a fascination with listening to this a lot, like around like my senior year of high school, freshman year of college, because I just had such, a rapturous following. And yeah, it's really cool. I don't think that it's not something that I would throw on, but at the same time, it has some of the most, I think, like creative production that Doom rapped over during this era. From what I can remember, like it kind of sounds like cartoonish, like at points, but in an endearing way, which is not something that I would say about a lot of rap projects personally.
Which makes it different than Viktor Vaughn, because Viktor Vaughn is not produced by Doom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it is. I feel like it's way more maximalist and like cinematic and bombastic, but still like more cinematic, not necessarily in like modern movies, but it is very throwback, cartoon and 50s sci-fi sort of way.
I like how it draws from that stuff where it kind of sounds like some of the stuff is what like from what I remember, like it sounds like stuff that could have been on like a War of the Worlds news broadcast or something.
Yeah.
So that's what it reminds me of. So yeah, I think that's a good pull. And yeah, man, I Wonder is like one of the two best I Wonders in rap history. So that's what I have to say about that. Yeah, lovely strings on that one. Sphinx talked about it already. So yeah, I mean, this is a great record. I love the album cover too. Me, I'm always going to take a mention for the album cover, but I think it's really cool and creative. And I would put this in top. I don't know how I rank all the Doom albums, but it would be in the top 5 somewhere.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's in my top 5. But it's very good. Like the thing is, even if a Doom album is not in my top 5, it's better than people's entire career. Like a lot of the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
like
good point.
It was only it's the first 8 seasons of The Simpsons rule that like the worst stuff Doom put out for a while is better than your best day, and this is some of his best. Like again, out of the big 4 we're discussing, I'd say is probably number 2 for me. So
yeah, I like it better than Viktor Vaughn.
Yeah, I think we're about to catch some pushback from one person in the chat. in about a second, but
I
probably
get
a
it.
good chance to transition to talking about the Viktor album. So
Yeah.
unless nobody has anything else on Geedorah.
Oh, we're good.
All right, yeah, because this will be 18 hours long if we talk so much time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a bit conscious of my time. I'm in upside down world, so
Yeah, so we'll move
Should be
on
right.
to Viktor Vaughn, Vaudeville villain, who don't give a flying fuck, who ain't not feeling him.
What was you doing? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, we're not gonna play that. It'll be 18 hours long as well.
Yeah,
Y'all have listened to the Triple X episode when Sphinx and I just start rapping lines back at each other.
in
And that was
character.
Danny Brown, so we couldn't rap half the album anyway because it'd be unlistenable for a lot of reasons. Yeah, this is, I said before, and people disagreed, I think this is probably the best technical rapping Doom's ever done.
That actually, when you said that, I didn't respond, but back when I was in my hip hop forums days, even after Madvillainy dropped, many people were saying Viktor Vaughn is a better album, Vaudeville Villain, not the second one, than Madvillainy. It was a strong, not everyone, but maybe 50% of Doom fans were saying that Vaudeville Villain is the best Doom album because the rapping is on another level.
And I think that it does definitely cater to that mindset of the real hip hop head. He's rapping in this hungry sort of way, alert sort of way that he never really would again, including on the second Viktor project. The way he inhabits this character, I think in terms of characters, this is probably his most fully realized one. And it's such a simple concept too. He said in interviews, it's like, imagine Doom as a cocky 19-year-old. And that seems a little thin in concept, but in practice, that's exactly what he does. And then it's not even a 19-year-old because, think about what's the one with it's Vaughn versus the ninth graders, the one about the stolen Atari cartridges.
Oh yeah, Never Dead.
Yeah, the roach is never dead. Yeah, that's straight up middle school shit. It feels like he's taking his old experiences in his real life and then synthesizing them into this fictional character that fleshes out this other fictional character. It's fucking layers upon layers in that regard. And then as a rap performance, it's just impeccable. But in terms of a whole album structure, it doesn't quite do it for me like the other big three that we're going to discuss. I can't point to any whack songs or anything, although it is a little long. This is the one of the big albums I would say is long.
Yeah, that one of the reasons I like Geedorah better is that it's shorter, and also this one has no Doom beats, which I like Doom beats.
Yeah, much like Disco Stew needs disco music, MF Doom needs MF Doom beats. And
No, Madvillainy doesn't have MF Doom beats, but
it's doesn't. Different. But that's a whole other animal, and also that's Madlib. That's Madlib doing his interpretation of Doom's VHS aesthetic, couch potato aesthetic. So, I mean, I think we can make allowances for Madlib in pretty much any circumstance.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's Madlib, so it's there is no other, pretty much that. But to me, with this album, I feel like this is a night and day difference from Take Me to Your Leader, where Take Me to Your Leader was really lo-fi. It is all Doom, production. And then you got this one, which is really clean production in comparison and zero Doom production. But yeah, for me, this is toe-to-toe with Madvillainy. I've listened to it. I've probably listened to Madvillainy more, but this is one which has tracks individually that I return to more. I think this album is incredible. Yeah, and like you said, exactly, Pat. It's definitely much more fleshed out of a character. King Geedorah, it is a character, but it's not necessarily, he's not stepping too far away from the MF Doom. He's still, they're all three of them are sort of villains in a way, but this is the one where it is a bit more of a stylistic choice where he's rapping, with much more hunger and much much more disgusting too in a lot of the tracks, and much more. There's much more of an urgency, and there's also like a lot of the sci-fi themes that are not just one or two tracks, but is like the beats are like complete sci-fi glitchy beats. There's multiple narrative tracks here with like completely absurdist time traveling and black magic and robbing all women only to get robbed back and things like that. Where it's definitely much more like a really, really fleshed out character. I think
that Let Me Watch is probably the most relatable song he's written. Also, like the biggest villainy he's actually done in terms of like being a real life villain. Like, in terms of just being an asshole. Like there's really, and I never really thought about this until saying this right now, but Let Me Watch is kind of the prequel to Fancy Clown. And again, layers within layers. Fancy Clown, who is he being a complete asshole to, aside from, the unnamed woman in the song himself, the other, MF Doom. So that's, again, layers within layers. But the person, the character in Fancy Clown is exactly the same person who's the complete asshole to Apani B as Nikki in Let Me Watch, which just one of the best hip hop songs of all time. There's like a narrative rap, as the beat is beautiful. The way it plays out like that little lonely guitar with the tinkly piano at the end. I'd rather masturbate than fuck with Big Vaughn. Let me watch.
That track, yeah. It's also like it's almost like a subversion of like the typical breakup / relationship song, because it starts off pretty good, and then it sort of relationship sorts of break up, and then towards the end is like rather masturbate. He's just like he's still trying to get in on it. like a creep.
Too Dutch. Yeah.
Yeah, like it starts off like kind of romantic and sentimental, and then at the end you're like, ugh. This is just kind of weird now.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's like, again, like this song is touching on stuff that other songs weren't. Like she's talking about being on antidepressants because of all the shit that he went through. Like what other songs are really touching on those themes? Like from a female perspective, especially.
But even a male perspective, this wasn't a common topic at that time, because I think rap being braggadocious since like LL Cool J or even before that, you never show your soft side or your weaknesses when you're rapping. It's always about being the best. Nowadays, we got tons of depressive rap, and it's very different. But at that time, going back to like battle raps, it wasn't very common. We talked about Atmosphere, which was very different then, but everything was always about how great you are and not how whack you are.
Yeah. The only other example is probably like the F word from like Cannibal Ox from like a couple of years before, but it's very rare to find like a track where like the rap is vulnerable, especially when it comes to relationship with women.
And even that one you can kind of read, if you're a shithead, as like an incel's anthem, like I'm in the friend zone, bro. Like, whereas this one's very nakedly, like you would have to be a real terrible person to sympathize with Viktor in this song. Be like, oh man, you get to hit that. Like, and I'm sure there are people who are like that, but the song pretty clearly spells it out for you. Like,
yeah.
So
it gets creepy, yeah. But the production on this is like it's handled by like I think they just literally like the people who started like Sound Inc. or like the people working at Sound Inc., which is I think King Honey, Heat Caesar, and Max Bill mainly. But for such a group of different producers that no one has pretty much like virtually have no other credits. This is like such a cohesive sound. Like it's incredible, like incredibly produced and incredibly clean, like mixing, mastering, all that jazz. But like it's really cohesive, like track to track to track. I can see someone maybe like accusing it of being samey in a way, but to me, like it's actually pretty amazing that they managed to pull out something like this all together, piece it together, where it's all it's quite glitchy and sci-fi, but it also sometimes it's like ominous sci-fi. Other times it's like Let Me Watch, where it's more somber.
something like Lactose and Lecithin has that real I like ominous is a good descriptor for it. It sounds like that buzzy transmitter sound to it. Again, like bad tracking VHS type 50s sci-fi sounds. I would say the one outlier is Saliva, which is also the one real name producer on here, RJD2. But I think that works too as a hard, like, Let Me Watch plays out. And then you just have that porn break from Saliva that comes in, and probably the most energetic rap performance on here, which it's like kind of like the album's playing out its first half with those closing credits, and then it bursts into the second half. So I think that even that works as a hard transition.
Yeah, that's one of his better beats too. Well, he was very good at that time, RGD too. But that's still one of his highlights, I think. Yeah,
it's just really like in your face and cinematic, like with like the horns and everything. It's fantastic.
It actually kind of predicts. It's not really a rap album, but I think it was between Dead Ringer and Since We Last Spoke. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, the second one, 2004.
The second one, which I can't believe I had to struggle with the name of that because I listened to it a lot, and I think that it's not like a traditional like DJ Shadow-esque rap album. I guess following the steps of DJ Shadow, it's a little more like the Private Press than introducing. But I think that's a great album, and I think this kind of predicts that change in sound a little bit. It's not like a super traditional instrumental to rap over, but of course, Doom, Viktor fucking kills it with just super energetic performance. So,
yeah, and it is like a fantastic beat, and a lot of these other beats, they also have like an incredible amount of detail in them. Like I was listening to this on headphones, and there's like so many stuff that I picked up that I wouldn't have picked up on speakers, which is still crazy that like it was a underground album from a label that pretty much has very small catalog with a bunch of unknown producers, but it sounds incredibly professional, and it sounds like a whole bunch of like veterans like put all their hands into the production. Because definitely like I urge people to like, if they're going to check this out, and I listen to it on headphones, like it's a real auditory like treat, like so good.
And that's interesting that you should say that. And Diction might be able to have a better perspective on this than me, because I remember at the time, like you were saying, this got more praise than Madvillainy. I remember like a few years later when I was coming to Doom and like reading on the internet, the party line was that Madvillain was the better produced album. This was the great rapping album that had production that you might not like. Maybe because it was a little more electronic, like techno shit, So I'm sure somebody on the internet did this techno shit at some point in the early 2000s. But
it was probably Diction. That sounds like something Diction would say himself.
No, I don't know. I do not see techno.
Legends Will Never Die review. On the next track, Doom gets on his techno shit.
I don't remember. I preferred Madvillainy. When people were saying Viktor Vaughn was the better album, I was like not getting it at all, because for me Madvillainy was such a masterpiece when for the beats, but also for the rhymes. Even the podcast name is named after one of the lines on it, and everything is so quotable. For me, the best rapping is also in Madvillainy. Does it have to do with the fact that I played it a million times? Perhaps. But yeah, it's not just to say anything against Vaudeville Villain, because it's a great album. I was just going in order of preference between which, and it has a unique sound. It has indeed great rapping on it. And MF Doom is really on top of his game when it comes to that. And yes, the no-name producers are doing an excellent job. I think it has a little bit more of an electronic sound, which was going in line with sort of the glitch hop wave of that time, pre-Fuse 73. It sort of fits into that wave, and it was interesting that Doom was able to go from his mechanical robot sound of King Geedorah to these beats and in another character too, and adapted them like no problem.
That's true. And I think it makes sense why M Saeed is here, one of the best tracks, Never Dead. But it is definitely, I can see why some people might not have liked this, like anti-pop consortium, who I love. I know a lot of people just hate them, but the beats are definitely more like in line with some of the stuff that they did, especially like on Arrhythmia, which I think came out a year before this.
Yeah.
And
it's also it's less pronounced than anti-pop was doing. I think it's sort of a transition between the real hip hop sound and the more electronic stuff of anti-pop. It's like in between.
Yeah, you don't have beats that are where the percussion is like a ping pong ball bouncing from like the left channel to the right channel, or just like you have like a break where it breaks into like an opera and then it goes back into like a sampled sound of like cars starting up and driving off and things like that.
Beat though, which I think is a little bit like that's deliberately provocative. Like, you know, he's deliberately trying to rhyme over something as difficult as possible. And again, like I feel like Lactose and Lecithin is deliberately minimalist. And there's stuff on here I think that is maybe not anti-pop level, but close. I can see where it's less immediately appealing than Madvillainy and Food, which is definitely like, I think Food's instrumentals are like prototypical. Like out of everything we're talking about, I think if you had to say what's the most like typical Doom instrumental example, I think the instrumentals on Food, like Beef Rap.
Oh yeah.
Something like Beef Rap is like a classic dictionary definition Doom instrumental. And I don't think
it's probably is easiest to get into. Food, like for an introduction, like even if it's Madvillainy now, it's considered. We can. I don't know if we're ready to move into Madvillainy.
So it's Madvillain. Then
Caleb.
Madvillain, then Viktor, then Food. Viktor 2, then Food. I think is how it goes. Or
how much time are we spending? Are we spending a lot of time on Viktor 2?
Not really. I don't think.
I was gonna say because you guys did cover it previously.
That is true.
I recall.
And I hate to end. If that's the one we're ending on, no way. Like, I don't want to end on Viktor 2.
No, Food is the last one.
Okay. No, it's just that my next point was going into Madvillainy, so...
All right, well, I completely shit on your transition, and I apologize, but feel free.
No, it's just if we have more to talk about Viktor Vaughn, we could continue on that, and I'll...
No, I pretty much exhausted my points on.
Did we talk about Modern Day Mugging? That's one of my favorites on here. That's what I was going to say.
I like that.
I like the don't like harass the old ladies unless they carry mad cash or whatever. Yeah. As a life motto, I guess. Thank you, dude.
I was gonna say, yeah, that song is like he travels through time or something. Is it that one where he's like he travels to the future because drugs are cheaper in the future, or something? Oh, that might be another track. But yeah, at the end he's like he's robbing people with a gun that has no bullets, and then he tries to rob an old lady, and she starts shooting at him before he even pulls a gun out.
As a great bit of humor. I also I think it's actually mentioned in one of the reviews on here, but I like I forget which song it is, but what is it? Where he's talking about like I cheat the game like walkthroughs or something. Or, yeah, it was a fire bar. I forget which review mentioned it, but yeah,
that's a middle school ass flex right there.
Yeah,
I got the Brady Games walkthrough. I can beat Emerald Weapon, but
got him. Yeah,
and even like on Never Dead, like I never paid attention to what the story is, and especially like I love Anti-Pop Consortium M. Saeed, but with his flow, it's very very fast and wordy and offbeat, but. That I was like, what? Because it's like a story about it's one where he stole his Donkey Kong game, but it starts off with like he's in school, and it's like a kind of like a school shooting kind of song. So he's like in school, and then someone steals his game. So then they go to a black market in Chinatown to like get some black magic sort of stuff, and they travel back in time to like retrieve the game, but they also like start shooting at people. Something like that. It's really really bizarre.
And it ends with him like facing down like all of the 9th grade, basically.
Yeah, it falls against the 9th grade. Yeah, it's just a complete like to me it's like brilliant like absurdism. I don't know. To me like easily like top 2 Doom album. Like to me like this and Madvillain is just like back and forth.
I just want to mention real quick, one of my favorite Doom lines is on here. I think it's on track 2. It's if these 4 walls could talk, they'd probably still ignore me.
Yep.
That hits different. Quarantine life, that hits different.
Yeah. Eat your heart out, Kendrick. You didn't make that You didn't make that song.
I love he had a lot of awesome like turn on phrases like that, like all throughout his career, and such good quotables.
Yeah, Doom and Billy Wood share the same quality, I think, and I talked about this with a lot with Haram in the episode with Kosa Brian, where it's like taking a cliche and turning it on its head. I think Doom has a real way with that, and you get that from here a lot, like because Victor's a sarcastic ass teenager, so of course he's gonna like do shit like that. So like that.
What is the buck the bottle? It's like, what is it?
The Nas line, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like fuck that.
Struck the lotto.
I could have bought a bottle.
Yeah. So I don't have anything in particular that's interesting to say compared to a lot of these guys. Like, this is a great album. I would probably put it like 5th in the Doom category. I don't know. It's tough to rank, but I like the this pretty much is really consistent. I think probably one of the more consistent Doom records that isn't like the one we're all going to talk about soon. But like, I don't think that there's a single song on here that I was like, oh, that was definitely like a noticeably, maybe like Mr. Clean or something, but like noticeably weaker than the rest of the track list. I think I listened to it the other day to brush up, and it was still hitting. And
I mean, on initial listens, go ahead.
No, I think one thing I wanted to say that I didn't get to mention in my Geedorah like little dissertation, but was how well that all these albums are sequenced. And I don't think I mentioned that enough in previous like Doom episodes of how it just, even when there's a song that's like longer songs or the runtime is pushing longer, it never feels like that to me. And I think it's because of how like relaxed Doom is, and how there is like a sense of variety, whether that's through the sonic like soundscapes or things like some of like the skits, which might seem, I think they fall for the most part in like the charming category of skits, so that kind of helps. And there's sometimes where like you might not necessarily know like what track you're on if you're not paying attention, but if you just kind of look up, like lines will always catch your ear, and to me like Doom records always had that. So that's kind of my general thought.
We can move on to Madvillainy if you'd like.
Yeah, well, the transition point, it was that Madvillainy, I know it's not considered that weird anymore, but when it came out, okay, I heard the advanced version.
The R, I think that's we can touch on that real quick, because that circulates as our Madvillain, and I think it's like it has different Doom vocal takes on it, and it has one song that's not on the retail, I believe, like one vocal track, maybe.
But I don't remember it, because it didn't. I liked it as much as Viktor, Vaughn, and King Geedorah in 2003, but I haven't listened to it. But when the album was about to drop, hip hop site, which were pretty reliable for hip hop reviews, they gave it 10 on 10. So it's like, oh, okay, this is real. When they gave an album 10 on 10, it's like, you need to copy it. And that was the real thing. So I did purchase it. And the first time I put it on, I didn't know what the hell I just listened to. Like, what the fuck is this album? Like, it made no sense how the beats were structured, how the songs were structured. But I got to the end of the album and I pressed play again. And the second time and the third time, I did the same thing. I listened to it 3 times in a row, just trying to figure out what the hell was this album, because it was so different. Short songs, beat switches, everything it did, well, plus all the weird samples. And Doom's rapping, which I was used to, but it was still kind of different. I don't know, it's one of the most memorable first few listens I've ever had into an album. Yes, I was hyped because of the praise that it got, but I can't remember anything that is remotely close to this that came before. It just pushed hip hop in a completely different direction, I think, and we can see many people, many modern artists quoting this album as one of their main influences. Like Danny Brown, he said that album changed the way he made music. So there's a lot of things to say about this album, but that's that one really impacted how I listen to music. I became a big Madlib fan. I already had the Loopback album when I got this, and Shades of Blue, which I liked. I liked both, but this put Madlib sort of on a bigger pedestal. And yeah, it started like even then. I listened to my older albums in a different way, like. Are the beats hitting as hard as Madlib is able to do on this album is always something I had in the back of my mind. So yeah, it's a very special to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a probably a different reaction than some of you guys, just because I came to it a lot later, and it's one of the albums where it's like, you gotta check it out. It's one of the first rap albums you'll see on any all-time list that isn't like 36 Chambers or Illmatic. You know what I mean? And it is kind of remarkable that it has that sort of status, considering when it came out and where it came from compared to something like Nas, and had a huge push behind him, and a lot of things like Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, very New York, at the time when rap media was pushing a lot of that stuff. So it makes sense. This album is like, it's hard to even talk about for me because it's like a very personal record. I mean, I'm very glad that Accordion is as, beloved as it is, because it's just like, it's one of the most beautiful rap songs I think ever. I love when he kind of lets it ride out, and then he comes back right in with the, when you get on the mic, all that stuff. I'm not going to rap like MF Doom, I promise. But I think I didn't, the first time I heard the Meat Grinder instrumental, I didn't really know what to what to make of it, like heads or tails. That was one that definitely confused me. Rainbows also confused me the first time, but I definitely grew to love both of those. As well. All Caps, I think that was the first music video I saw. Yeah. For any Doom anything, and it like kind of blew my mind with how like creative and cool it was. And I remember watching it a couple times. And Rhinestone Cowboy, my favorite is that's one of my favorite songs on here. Like that's one of the most creative Doom songs I think he's ever done, because like just the concept of like performing it and like self-critiquing during the song. I feel like that sort of meta wasn't, I mean, you guys would know better than me, how like Doom does a lot of that sort of like meta stuff, and I felt like that wasn't around in hip-hop previously. Where it's like a very self-aware artist. So
I mean, there's definitely been more of it since Doom, I would say.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that like Tyler would have done in like 2012 or something, and this obviously it makes sense because Tyler has cited Doom as.
Well, I think it's something Tyler tried to do on Goblin and kind of didn't come across properly because he was busy. I think he did it in a way more antagonistic sort of way because it was Tyler in 2011 or whatever. But I think, like, again, like I said, direct line from Doom to Odd Future. Like, you can see the video of them seeing Earl and Tyler watching Doom live and, like, geeking the fuck out. But, yeah, I think that's something, like, one of the many things that Doom did open up, aside from being a weirdo, was also being able to, like, be meta like that. Like, the multiple characters is also a way for him to, like, be introspective and self-critical, but with his sense of humor, it's not like slug style self-flagellation emo rap. Like, it's not Sage Francis' personal journals, again, to circle back to that. So
I liked when you said that I didn't know what to make out of it. That's exactly my feeling of the album. I was more puzzled by what the album was than liking it. Like, I wasn't even liking it. I was like, what is this? Like, how we're not allowed to make a beat like that. And
what the fuck is Rainbows? Like, honestly, what the fuck is Rainbows? Like, the first time I heard that, I did not know. Like, a lot of this took a long time to parse for me. My first exposure to it was, I mean, I'm not going to go into another journalism thing, but my first exposure to it was a review in Rolling Stone. It was either Rolling Stone or Spin. It got a token mention, like a little sidebar thing, where it talked about how, I think I've mentioned this on the show before, how it's a terrifying album where the beats go in and out like nightmares. Yeah, it's a real scary album. It's a real fucking, like, great. What are you talking about? Did they even listen? Like, did they just look at the cover art and just, like, shit this out? Like,
I would almost categorize this, and I don't mean this in a negative at all. This is like easy listening. Like,
I mean, there's like Bistro, like, you know, Yesterday's New Quintet playing smooth jazz type shit. Like, I mean, I feel like it's definitely closer to cloudy turn of the decade stuff than it is certainly like nightmarish horror. Like, I mean, there's ominous.
Well, some of the skits are,
but not really. Like, I don't think that's the vibe Madlib's going for at all. It's definitely a way more relaxed, smoky vibe than anything, for sure. I gravitated more towards certain tracks on my first listen than I did the whole thing. There was other stuff I couldn't make heads or tails of, but I knew I liked All Caps. I knew I liked it. I didn't know why. It became my favorite album of all time over years. It's like the definition of a grower album for me.
Yeah. I like College Dropout better in 2004 than I did Madvillainy. By the end of the year, Madvillainy was my album of the year because they both came out fairly early in 2004. This one was March and College Dropout was either January or February. But most of the year, College Dropout was my favorite album. At some point, I was a huge Kanye fan. And
you are now more than ever.
No, I can't stand him anymore. But Madlib is still among my favorites. And this lasting power that the album has, and even now, I don't play it that often, but when I do, it's still like, wow, it's like the golden standard for a hip hop album. Where, one of the things that bothers me, and on Rate Your Music, is that it doesn't have experimental hip hop tag primary. Because that album was so fucking weird for me and so out of this world, like nothing ever fucking sounded like it before. But now, since it's been, I don't know, emulated a lot, it's not weird anymore.
Well, can I say,
yes,
Cloud Dead came out like 2 or 3 years before this. No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. In terms of weird, I mean that is like 100 times weirder than this. That was 2001. So just saying.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. I'm not saying that this is not experimental. I definitely agree with you there. I'm just saying there's definitely weirder.
No, I'm not saying it's the weirdest.
This is also good,
album.
unlike Cloud Dead. So I mean, it has that going for it.
Anyway, what are you saying, Viction?
No, I'm not saying it's the weirdest album, but the thing is not experimental. It's like, I guess, yes, beats have changed. People have copied Madlib and
people have influenced by him. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it might sound like normal beats, but in 2004, these weren't normal beats. And even Madlib, if you go to his previous work, Loot Pack was very boom bap, dilated peoples. Quasimodo was essentially just Loot Pack beats. And well, the first Quasimodo, not the second one. Second one is a lot more in the Madvillainy style. But even there, he pushed himself to, I don't know, change how hip hop beats were made. So well, maybe some older heads than me might have this feeling about, I don't know, Daily Operation or something, where they never heard any beats like that, and it was experimental for them back then. And now, Daily Operation, no, it's not experimental hip hop. Everybody, DJ Premier, it's standard. So maybe I'm looking at it from a old head perspective. But for me, that was definitely something that blew my mind in how weird and unconventional it was. And I'm not the experimental hip hop. Like, for me, being weird is okay, but you still need to hold your ground in the. It still needs to sound hip hop and not like a bunch of random noises. You still need to keep the hip hop bass of the drums, and the drumless is fine, of course, but.
It's funny that you'd say that because you're talking about experimental, and I was thinking back to the Honorable Mentions episode where we're talking about the Injury Reserve album, and I'm like, I wonder what Diction thinks about this, and I was talking about it in the Discord, and then you respond, I fucking hate it. So that is a perfect example of what is considered experimental now, and to your point about that you have to keep it in a basis in hip-hop for you to enjoy it. But I think that you wouldn't be able to have something like that get the kind of widespread acclaim and exposure it has without this opening the door. This opened the door for so much. Like, I don't think, I mean, not necessarily in terms of stylistically, but I think at least in terms of exposure and acceptance, you don't have anything from Die Lit to Injury Reserve by the time I get to Phoenix, or even like early Dialect without this. Like, people aren't going to check for those albums without the way that this just broke it all the way the fuck open. Like, just it was weird. It was weird as shit. Like, people forget that again. Like, Raid. Like, why are you like who raps over that? Like, what? Like, that is just such a bizarre beat. Who would even think to make that? And like Shadows of Tomorrow. Like, the first time I heard Shadows of Tomorrow, I was like, what the fuck is going on?
That one's insane. But it wasn't. Yes, like there was a 10 on 10 review in the hip hop site. But if you looked on Rate Your Music back in 2004, this wasn't close to number one. That no hip hop albums were ever topping their years, but like it might have been in the top 50 or something. But same for College Dropout. Like, it was all indie rock or metal. That's most of the things that were topping the site. I guess the user base was much different back then. But like, even I didn't get the feeling of massive praise from like a general, like Arcade Fire Funeral was much more of the critics pick of the year.
In 2004?
And in 2004. That was the critics pick. And Madvillain, that most critics probably didn't even listen to it. Like, even if now it's considered probably more important than Arcade Fire's album, it sort of goes in line with the underground stuff. Like, even if Stone's Throw managed to push it more, it was still like underground hip hop, which was not able to like get the top awards and stuff.
Yeah, and I think something else is that you gotta remember, like, it was such a different time to the point where, like, which is absurd to think now that people were actually saying, is hip hop music? Like, which is such a crazy thing. But this are discussions that were being had like in the 2000s.
Yes.
So you had those people who denied that hip hop is even music. They said, oh, they're just stealing other people's music and just talking over it. Then you had the mainstream, which is, a bit more glitz and glamour and, gangster rap and pop rap, that sort of stuff. Then you had the backpackers who, they were the only ones that they were, championing this stuff. But even with them, there was, different camps fighting about different stuff. But yeah, with this album, I had similar experiences to you guys, where I think for my introduction to Doom was Gorillaz. Then when I checked. I was like, oh, who's this MF Doom guy? Everyone said to check out Madvillainy. I listened to it. Same as you guys. I was like, what the hell is this? I love accordion. I love all caps, but all of this stuff in between, I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know where a song starts and ends and all that sort of stuff. But I think that, what sort of also made this stand the test of time is the fact that, like I sort of mentioned before, it is still, as experimental as it is, still sort of steeped in traditions of hip hop. You know, you got guest rappers like Wild Child and MED who are quite, MED much more so, quite traditionalists in terms of rapping. And even Doom himself, he, stays within the pockets of the bars and the beats, as compared to Dialect and Cloud Dead and Anticon that came out before this, but people could easily dismiss that saying, well, that's not hip hop music. I mean, they're kind of rapping, but it's not hip hop music. It's industrial music and it's ambient music or whatever it is. It's not hip hop. Whereas this, I feel like it's definitely like it much more sits much more comfortably on that line. But yeah, like with me, over time.
But also, I think another thing that this introduced more than Viktor Vaughn or King Geedorah is songs with no hooks. Madlib just drops the beat, Doom lays a few verses on it, and then boom, next song. This was not a standard in hip hop at all. Every song
is there anything with a hook? Is there anything with a hook on here? Honestly, I'm trying to think. What has a? I mean,
Strange Ways, maybe.
I mean, you could argue
even then. That's just like a sample.
Yeah,
sample in Strange Ways. I guess you could argue. Not Great Day. I mean, Great Day has a melody to it, but Rhinestone Cowboy ends on ends emphatically with the verses, but that's not a hook. That's just him ending on the name of the song.
Yeah, I think
no, not really.
Maybe America's Most Wanted, but even then, that's just like a sample. That's
scratches. Well, that was pretty standard. America's
that's like a primo style scratch. Yeah. So that's like a traditional hip hop hook, I guess, but certainly not. He's not doing singing hooks or anything.
No, but
we would have to wait until Born Like This for "Haven't you gone without these rhymes too long?"
All the underground boom bap of the time was mostly based on one verse, then a scratch hook, another verse, then another scratch hook. Even if it's not an R&B singer doing the hook, you always add this sort of 4 or 5 minute structure to a song, and they were all laid out mostly in the same way. Even classic Gangstar is laid out in this fashion, and it's always been, there's always been this. And that's what was so weird about this album, is that it threw out these conventions, and they were just and now you see it in all the albums. Well, maybe not all of them, but so many hip hop albums nowadays also follow this lack of convention. When it comes to making songs, and having a 90-second hip hop song is very common now, and before it was a skit.
And I think it's a real testament to how influential this album is. Obviously you got people like West Side and Gun and a lot of gangster rappers and all that sort of stuff that are influenced by this. Specifically this album. And it's the same album that has a song Operation Lifesaver, which is about a girl that has bad breath and he's trying to slip mints into her drink. And then he's making metaphors with war and ammo and camo and watch a 3 o'clock new recruit and putting juicy fruit in her gin and juice, and the same album has this, and Shadows of Tomorrow went on to influence conscious rappers, gangster rappers, experimental, everyone pretty much. It's and then I think going to your point, Diction, about the structure. I think Alaska might have mentioned this on Collabing podcast. He said one of the best things that happened to underground hip hop was when people realized you don't need 3 verses, you don't always need the third verse.
Yeah, thank God.
At
Man.
least
Like,
stick with like at most 2, and that's it. Like you don't need 3 verses,
yeah,
which is
it kinda
around this
blows up-
time.
It kind of blows up structure in a way. Another one of my favorite albums. I mean, you could argue, well, I'm referring to B1000, but more like even Alien Lanes by Guided by Voices kind of did with like the whole indie rock, alt rock, like that you really didn't need. Like, I think one of the things that Pollard does is like, you really don't need more than the hook and your best couple of lines. Like, and we're just going to do that as many times as possible. And what Doom does is like, you're going to get just my best lyrics. And like, I don't have a hook for you. I'm not a fucking singer. Like, we're just going to move on. I can rap over anything I will. I'll rap over whatever I want. I'm going to give you my best verse. And we're not really going to worry about giving you 3 verses just because a song has 3 verses. Like, there's no need for that. And again, that just goes with proudly being a weirdo, being an outcast in public. Like, now he's extended it to song structure. He's extended it to what you rap over. Am I going to loop Frank Zappa? Sure. Like, am I going to loop straight edge Frank Zappa to do a song about smoking weed by the baleful? Absolutely. Like,
well, people have sampled Zappa before. It wasn't, but there's a lot of out there music that's sampled on the album. Like, even if Madlib doesn't remember what he used, he kind of picks random records and
sometimes I think Madlib answers these questions in a way that's like, I'm sick of answering these questions. Somebody needs something.
Yeah. Although how many times has he really been asked those questions like in a proper interview? Because he doesn't do interviews. You know,
I mean, I think Peter Rosenberg asked him if he was really Quasimodo.
That's the one Madlib.
Really?
Wow.
That's like the one Madlib interview I can remember though. In the last like however many.
Yeah, he's done more recently since he's sober.
Like with Gibbs or by himself?
Well, around the Gibbs album rollout and the last one, Sound Ancestors.
Right.
Yeah, well, I think it sort of created also, well, not only with Madvillainy, this goes more into Madlib than Doom, I guess, but it created sort of a subculture of hip-hop beat making with like weirder sample choices and the old beat tapes that came with Beat Conductor and Donuts. Like, Beat Conductor is really just a continuation of Madvillainy, well, without the Doom parts, but the sort of beat style, short beats, move on to the next point very fast, and people are still copying this, well, not copying, but being influenced by this, and it's great. For me, that's one of my favorite styles that came out of that era, and I'm always willing to listen to more beat tapes that are influenced by Madlib.
Yeah.
Well, movie scenes is one of my favorite. I think, honestly, if anybody takes anything away from this, like, I would say that the one thing that people might have not heard that I could guide them to in this is movie scenes, which is essentially like a bonus Madvillain album without Doom beats. Like,
for me,
on there, like Open is one of my favorite instrumentals of all time. The Craft, again, like you were talking about how people flipped Zappa before, but maybe not quite the same way he does in America's Most Blunted. I would say people obviously flipped Kraftwerk before, but not the way, like on the way he does on Open is just like probably my favorite Kraftwerk flip.
For me, movie scenes is as important as Donuts.
I agree.
As far as influence on creating the beat tape scene, Donuts blew up because Dilla died, and it's well deserved. It's one of the best albums ever, no doubt about that. But movie scenes does the same thing, and it's amazing. It's some of Madlib's finest beats, and it just invented how to make short beat tapes. Well, lots of songs in short verses, which made, I think, instrumental hip-hop more interesting, because if you're going to loop out your song for 4 minutes, well, just loop it for 1 minute and then give me another loop in the other minute instead.
It's the exact same approach Doom took to his verses that I was talking about. It's like just a song doesn't have to be X amount of length just because it always has been. I'm just going to give you the best part and move on.
Yeah. I think this is. When I was listening to like the Second Company Flow, quote unquote album, which is Little Johnny from the Hospital, which is pretty much just like a LP beats instrumental record, like really good beats, but Jesus, it's an hour long, and each song, it is.
It drags on. Like Pete Instrumentals is another one of that. The early instrumental hip hop album, like Introducing, is different. Yeah, they're long songs, but DJ Shadow just
conceptual and
but it keeps changing. It's not just a vibe. Like Pete Instrumental is very much a vibe. Like he lays off.
Instrumentals I will allow a little more than Little Johnny, just because I think Pete had his intros and his outros. I mean, there's still like a lot of stagnation in the way. It's like 3 or 4 minutes of the same thing.
Yeah, but it's good.
Known for its outros, but yeah, like it was that whole 45 King. Like that's how you made your hip hop instrumental versions for the longest time. It was just the equivalent of a hip hop song. A hip hop song's 4 minutes, so the instrumental version's 4 minutes. If that's a loop for 4 minutes, it's a loop for 4 minutes. So,
I wonder if it's also like. Is it a technology thing? Like they didn't, like in case someone wanted to rap over these, or in case they want to use this, we can just use the same file or something. Or surely they could loop back then. Like they could just make like a minute song, and someone who wants to rap over that could loop.
I think they just didn't think of the short length. Even DJ Crush, all of his albums from the 90s, there are 3-4 minute songs on it, and it's mostly a vibe. It's a loop. You feel good listening to the loop, and you're into it for 3-4 minutes. Madlib and J Dilla had a more like punk rock approach to instrumental. Is like, okay, let's do it fast. Like, okay, this is a good beat. You like it? Okay, I'll give you another one that you like. And the best thing about this is that even if there's a weaker song among them, well, it's only 1 minute. So even if you're not feeling this beat, well, another one's going to come along very fast and need to get you back into the groove. So, that's very important. And this is not something that Special Herbs was able to do. Like, as much as Doom is great, and he's got all these concepts, these different personas, great beat making, the Special Herb albums are built on the old beat tape template.
That's true. And I think like even the best of them is 9+0, and that was one of the first. That might actually be the first beat tape I ever bought. I bought it before the Nature Sounds compilation that made me mad that I whined about earlier. And like even that though, that's like I remember listening to it, and like the first one is starring, I forget what the first one is. It's like the first minute and a half, I'm nodding my head and I'm like, this isn't going to change. I mean, cool, but it's not going to change. And coming at it from somebody who loved movie sounds, which I downloaded off SoulSeek and everything, I'd already become more accustomed to the new style. So that's how much it changed it instantly for me, and I think for the entire beat tape scene. Like again, movie sounds predates Donuts. I mean, I think they were mutually influential to each other. Like obviously J-Lib happened around the same time too. So
yeah, I think there was definitely a trade-off of influences, and I'm pretty sure they've mentioned it. I think especially like Madlib's influence on J Dilla is quite understated. Like a lot of people, like Diction was saying with Donuts, a lot of it was to do with his death and the sort of the folklore around how the album was made, which I heard and I heard an interview with Peanut Butter Wolf where he said no, actually most of the album was done way before he was back into the hospital. But I think the Madlib influence is not as spelt out on J Dilla's music, but you can definitely see there's a pre J-Lib and a post J-Lib approach to J Dilla's music. Like even when listening to J-Lib, obviously the tracks with the rapping from one guy is produced by the other guy. Yeah. But even then, like when you listen to the instrumentals, they kind of, there is a bit of a flow between them, where, I usually like when I hear like a film, like an Indian Bollywood sample, I'm like, oh, I associate with Madlib. But then like on J-Lib album, some J Dilla beats have Indian samples. So there is definitely that trade-off, that point that they did where they have influence each other back and forth. And then you listen to some of the Madlib beats on J-Lib, and they have that sort of Detroit kind of pseudo sort of like electronic, like heavy beats kind of sound. So there is definitely like a trade-off of influences on each other. Around
I would
that
say on
point.
movie sounds for sure. Like something like Electric Company has that more Detroit-y sound that you would get on like Welcome to Detroit or something from Dilla. Just real quick before I lose the thread, so stuff I wanted to say about Madvillain before this goes on for 17 years is one of the criticisms I remember hearing about it was like, oh, it's great, but Doom's not rhyming about anything. Same sort of thing you'll hear about now with Aesop and Garbology or something, where it's like, oh, no, it's just nonsense. And I remember the first time this album truly hit me was listening to Strange Ways. It was like on a mix I made like in a friend's car and realizing exactly what he's saying on Strange Ways. It's one of the more direct songs on here. He's not really speaking in codes or anything, but it's like I'd already been conditioned from some of the press to be like, oh, it's a goofy stoner album. Like he's saying stuff. It sounds cool together, but don't think too hard about it. It's just abstract stuff. And it's like you listen to Strange Ways and it's like, no, it's not. He's pretty fucking clear here. They pray 4 times a day. We pray 4 times a day. They pray 5. Whose ways is strange when it's time to survive? Only one side is allowed to have bombs. It's like at this time there was tons of fuck George Bush, fuck the Iraq War type music, and none of it hit me like that. No one was saying it with that sort of clarity, that sort of one of the very few I can think of is Sphinx said his introduction to Doom's on the Gorillaz album. I think the De La feature on the Gorillaz album is one of the very few that hits the same way as Strange Ways does, actually. That's a really great verse that has that twist with the flight suit on at the very end. And you remember there's a very famous picture of George W. Bush being really cool with a flight suit on about all this good shit we did in Iraq. So yeah, that was like when I first really hit me on a lyrical level. And that's how this album just kind of hits me over time. It's like the one song where it's like, this isn't nonsense. This is just like, he's saying shit. And I mean, he says a lot of funny stuff. He says a lot of non sequiturs, like $500 just laying there in the middle of the street. Let's try and find something to eat. Like you have lines like that, but then you also have something like Great Day, or, the very first line that of course gives this podcast its name, Living Off Borrowed Time, the clock tick faster. That book ends with Great Day, where it never really mattered too much to me. I was just too damn old to MC. It's like a very world weary album. It's a very mortal album, but from somebody who's like a villain, like he's got these contrasts. It's the same sort of thing he did with Crazy World and I Wonder on the Geedorah album, but it's way better because he's the one rapping these songs.
But his lyrics are I don't know how to say it. Like it's great. Like it's not always like nonsense either. Like there's a lot of references to old school or just like good similes, and it's like it's good rapping. It's an unfair criticism that he got. And I remember a lot of people were criticizing his nonsensical stuff, but he's got so many great lines among all of this, and it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense from one line to the next. He's switching subjects, but I don't know. I never had a problem with his rapping. Like for me, that his voice was fine. His flow was fine, and the actual lyrics are very strong, and they still hold up today, which I think saying there's a lot of work put into them.
And yeah, I think that a good comparison would be like another one of my favorite albums of all time, Supreme Clientele. Ghostface has admitted over and over, don't try and analyze this too deep. Most of this shit, I just made it up to sound cool. Like
yeah.
That's not what Doom is doing here. I mean, Doom wasn't really one to give you too many guideposts anyway, but I don't think he would ever say that this is just, I mean, like, you have Looney Goo Goo, Cooney Kook, like, you have, like, occasional, like, gibberish stuff that I think the joke is that it's gibberish, but that's there within the context of a greater whole. Like, every song has at least one line that's deeper than its surface meaning.
Yeah,
like, read the fine print. Wonder what's the big, like he said it to you on the Geedorah album. It's a great rapping. It's a different kind of great rapping than you got on Viktor Vaughn. That was like battle rapping. It fits the vibe of the beats in a way that no one else could. And also, what you're saying about concept albums, I don't think there's a great overarching concept here, but I think there are individual concepts. Like Strange Ways is about war. Great Day is about mortality. Shadows of Tomorrow is about Sun Ra and smoking a shit ton of weed. America's Most Wanted is about smoking a shit ton of weed. Then you also have Fancy Clown, which is one of the best character sketches and narratives in like 2 minutes, which it's just like wheels within wheels type shit. Like, there are little short stories. Like I say in my review, it's something that works also as an album sequencing, to what Caleb was saying about album sequencing. It works as like, all these individual pieces, but it also works as a whole. It's like powerfully economical. It's like perfect album length.
But is it a good introduction?
Where you can listen to the whole thing.
Is it a good introduction to MF Doom?
That is something I was thinking about, and because it took...
It all took us a lot of time to get into the album.
I think Food was a better introduction. And at the time, I liked Food a lot more. Like, at the time, I liked this. I never disliked this. But again, I said it was a grower, and I pointed to that one moment that Strange Ways really hit me, that I started listening to it more and more over time. But even for a while, I was listening to movie sounds more than this. Like, there's probably a time where I would say I enjoyed movie sounds more than Madvillainy. I would never say that now. I think they're they're essential to each other, but I would never say that I would enjoy any album more than Madvillainy. But for a time, it took forever to settle with me. I think Food is much more immediately appealing, in spite of like the one big criticism that everybody leveled at that we'll get to when we talk about it, which is, I think, the one criticism you can make of Doom album sequencing. And I'm sure y'all already know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, well, I think the thing with Madvillainy, Food, I can see it appealing to hip hop fans, like hip hop traditionalists, because it's much more beats and bars. Whereas Madvillainy, I can see it being a decent introduction to people outside of hip hop. People are a bit more into psychedelic rock or jazz or things like that, like other genres of music. I can see it being a good introduction because you got verses and hip hop beats, but then you got the bit more experimental stuff. You got the instrumentals. You got different, at least two different rappers. You got some singing. So it's like a nice mix of different stuff that you can either pick and choose, or you can once you gain an appreciation for all the different things, you gain a different palette. You can then enjoy the meal as a whole kind of thing. So that's why I think, initially I would have been like, I don't think it's a good introduction because it's probably his most out there thing. But then at the same time, well, that's the appeal to a lot of people, especially a lot of people coming out from the outside looking in. Even some people from the inside looking into it too, like hip hop heads, sort of crushes their concept. But something else I was going to say, it probably should move on, but just touching on the abstract, I feel like, abstract hip hop sort of has like a bit of a connotations, a stigma to it. But bringing up Ghostface is an excellent point, because it's like, I feel like being abstract and being creative and being freestyling, quote unquote, by definition of free of a concept, you can just rapping. To me, that's kind of pure hip hop in a way. To me, that is some of the traditions of hip hop. Is you're rhyming, but it's coming from a pure creative point. You're not necessarily, necessarily always need a concept. You don't always necessarily like, okay, what social topic do we have to address in the song? I feel like rapping, for the sake of rhyming, or for the sake of showing off technique, or for the sake of just, going from one point to another. I feel like that's a bit underappreciated. You know what I mean? In terms of like what's wrong with that? Like that is still the pure essence of rap and hip hop, is like creative expression in no matter way it is. And sometimes the creative expression can be abstract, and sometimes it is jumping from one random point to another, and sometimes it is just rhyming for the sake of because the words sound good together. Yes, it can be a point where okay, this is just literally just words stuck together that have no meaning. So I think that's a bit of the extreme side of stuff. But to me, things like Ghostface and MF Doom do, where they sort of sit, where it's even if a song doesn't have a concept, so what? It still sounds fantastic in terms of the art form and pushing the art form and words and the relationship with the words and the sounds together. It's abstract, but it's also free expression of emotions, which music is abstract in sort of a way. Sorry, I'll put my blunt down.
It's blunt meme revived. But,
yeah, but that's the last point I want to make there. Anyway.
I mean, I guess for my I like that you mentioned that. I guess I'll make my final comment real quick because I could talk about this for 8 more hours. It's my favorite album of all time. It's been well established, but I like that you said that because like when I really started getting obsessed with hip hop was when I really started getting obsessed with this album, and I think there was a real through line from my favorite rappers at the time, which was like Doom, Ghost, like this album, Supreme Clientele. Fish Scale is a much more direct album. I was really into that, but it's a much more direct album. This album, Supreme Clientele, Ghostface, and Cameron, Dipset. Like, I mean, that's more mainstream, but I think that Cam had the same quality that you're talking about of just shit that sounds good together. Just
Cameron and Doom are very similar rappers, just in different scenes.
Lanes, but same approaches. Yeah. There's a really good one of the Doom Blends albums. I don't think we're going to cover because we don't want this to be 18 hours long. Has the blend of Doom's that's Ghostface Mighty Healthy with Cameron's That's Me. Over a Doom Special Herb, which is one of my favorite things that he did, actually. So people should seek that out, too. In addition, if you haven't heard movie scenes, Special Herb, the Special Blends, which is a bunch of Doom Special Herbs with like more mainstream verses over it. And that's the best one on there is the Doom and Ghost, Ghost and Cam track, which really just shows that, Doom heard the same shit that we're talking about well after the fact. But real quick, I think my ultimate comment on this album, favorite album of all time, I've said it 100 times alongside At the Drive-In Relationship with Command. Everybody's like, that's a weird mix. Fuck you. I don't care. Is that something that David Simon said about The Wire is like the first season of it was that this is a training exercise. I'm trying to get you to relearn how you watch television, which is on its face a pretentious asshole thing to say, but also true. Like, it's like, I'm trying to get you to not watch this like a normal cop show or whatever. And Madvillainy ultimately was kind of like a training exercise for me on how I absorb music and art in general. Like the way I lived with it, like I got into so much more in terms of how I listened to verses, which kind of bled over into how I read books, just how I absorbed things, like became obsessed with beat tapes, became obsessed with like the jazz based upon the samples in it, just everything. Ultimately, it changed my life in so many ways that I can't express my gratitude for it enough.
It changed the way I analyzed beats. I had listened to a lot of music before it came out. I was 21 years old when I got it on release day. So, and I was obsessed with hip hop since I was 15 years old. So it was 6 straight years of listening nothing to hip hop, or nearly nothing to hip hop, but hip hop. And I was really into DJ Premier, Pete Rock, Marley Marl, like all the classic hip hop producers. These are all guys I worshipped. But fuck that one, it made me rethink of what the possibilities of a beat. And yeah, pretty good album.
Yeah, it's all right. I don't know. It's no like Everybody by Logic.
Certainly not.
I was gonna say it's not Venomous Villain, is it?
How dare you actually come up with a good transition? I was gonna say Logic when we don't know what else to do on this podcast.
Hands up, who actually listened to this, by the way? I listened to it. Who listened to it?
I've listened to it a bunch. I mean, obviously we did the podcast on it before. I haven't listened to it too recently, but I've listened to it a lot in the past, and it's, again, my perspective on it hasn't changed significantly since we did the previous episode, although I was listening to it more for what I'd said about Doom versus Mock than its own merits. I think it's more interesting than good, and it's unlike the Geedorah album. It's an album that Doom's absence is felt as opposed to makes you appreciate Doom more. When Doom's not around, it sucks.
We're talking about VV2?
Venomous. Yeah, we're talking about Venomous.
Okay, I listened to it yesterday, which I had not revisited in many, many years, and it's very random. Like, it's a bunch of Doom stuff pieced together. Like, I can understand the point of view of it was for the money, it's just a bunch of leftovers, which is entirely possible. There's nothing like amazing, like there's nothing that stood out like, okay, this is an essential Doom track, I'm gonna put it on whatever mix the Doom related. There's none of that, but none of it was bad either. I enjoyed my 32 minutes that I spent with it, and it was nice to hear more, but not amazing. Better than Monster Island's Daughters, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's totally fine. It's just, I would say, I think it got a real slag when it came out. I think if I paid $15 or whatever in 2004 money for a Doom album and I got this, I might feel a little cheated. But on the other hand, all the Doom you get is good, and I think that stuff like Ode to Road Rage and Bloody Chain, like those are classic Doom performances in terms of like taking a concept and fleshing it out. Although I think that he's doing less with the Viktor character here than he does on Vaudeville.
I didn't get a Viktor vibe from it. I just got it's random Doom shit put together, which is fine because he was in his prime back then. So it's like it's just B-sides or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, if I recall correctly, this was put together as a label sampler. I think it's the guy Israel who came up with one of my favorite bad albums of all time, Mr. Nagotko, which was one of Kool Keith's many craven chances to flog the Dr. Octagon legacy. And it's basically him just like talking like the whole time, like not even really rapping. I love it. It's a terrible album. But I think that guy's label was the one that put this out. And so it's was essentially a chance to show off like the people on that label / their producers. And so it's like a cut and paste job sort of deal, which is kind of why I think the verses feel a little disconnected from the instrumentals, which in a way works for them. It certainly gives the album character.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is in some ways similar to the first Vaudeville Villain, where it is a bunch of producers that are part of this label, like a tiny label, and a bunch of like small no-name producers, and then a bunch of guests. But yeah, there is like almost no effort, like for like MF Doom making like the Viktor Vaughn character. Like he's even rhyming much slower, like in his typical slower pace. He's not rhyming fast. He's not rhyming aggressively. Even to the point where like, yeah, he's making fun of the album itself. Like not only just like, obviously there's the first song Back End.
Album did it for the advance. The back end sucks. Yeah. So not even that, but even like the first, the second skit, Doom on Vic, where it's the MF Doom character talking about Viktor Vaughn. Even then, he sounds sarcastic, and like he sounds like he's forcing a separation between the characters. Like no, for real, like we ain't the same person. Like there is a character. Like he sounds like he sounds really jaded on that skit. But yeah, this is, it doesn't feel like a Viktor Vaughn. And admittedly, like when I first heard the first 3 tracks, I was like, man, this is fantastic. Like I don't know what people are talking about. Like even if it is not necessarily, a Viktor Vaughn album, I was like, this is really good. But yeah, then when even like track 5 and 6, like was it Rap Game and Dope Skill with some of the guests, Israel, Manchild, and Carl Kevorkian. I was like, this is really good. The beats are nowhere near Vaudeville, except the back end and fallback / TDFL were really good. But yeah, then afterwards, like when it hit the Kool Keith track Dope Skill, which is a nice transition from Dope Skill to Dope Skill. But I was like, I think something I read your review, Patrick, where I was like, it's a track with Kool Keith and MF Doom, and yet the best part is like the scratching, like the turntablism. And it is like Kool Keith and MF Doom on a track, finally. And it's like, it's 2 decent verses. Like Kool Keith is not even rhyming his, with his offbeat, insane flow. I do think Kool Keith does threaten to piss on somebody's hair, though, which is always.
Oh, yeah. There's like 2 mentions of defecation and urination. So I was like, okay, that's cool.
You should check out the new Cannabis album because there is a track with MF Doom and Kool Keith on it.
You should mention that.
There's a new Cannabis album?
Year-end episode.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm one of the few that likes the album.
Yeah, no, that your rating comes up. I'll say that much. We do a little bit of a genius breakdown of COVID Santa on the
Oh my god!
No,
The cover. Oh my god!
This can go back to the abstract segment from before when Cannabis definitely is creative with his rapping on that album.
I mean, his anatomical markers were definitely in alignment when he was writing on that album.
Dude. Oh my god! Did his little son, toddler, draw this cover?
I can't believe we're talking about the COVID Santa cover on 2 straight episodes.
Oh my god! Sounds like a conspiracy. Like a New World Order.
Why is the fedora guy on there? I wonder if he's the fedora guy from the Killer Priest Wimbledon song.
I like how he raps about like cryptocurrency in one bar, and then the next one he's talking about a rapper from like '93. Like the transitions are like out of this world.
Obvious person to be into cryptocurrency of all time. I bet Cannabis will talk to you for 8 hours about crypto. Like, I thought Nas being into crypto was the most obvious thing of all time, but no.
Anyway, there's a second track with Doom and Kool Keith on it, and I think it's a good one, personally.
Okay.
There's also a Doom and Kool Keith track on Time Astonishing, which is probably the last really good Kool Keith album that I can recall.
Yeah.
Because it's mostly not a Kool Keith album. It's just L'Orange finding like a handful of usable Kool Keith. It's like the opposite of ODB's feature on the Insane Clown Posse classic Bitches, where there was like 30 minutes of unusable audio and they were only able to get him rambling about bitches. Actually not rambling about bitches, but I'm talking about bitches. But yeah, like that's the opposite of that, where he was able to get like 6 hours of raw Kool Keith rambling whatever, and took like the 20 usable minutes, and then found a bunch of like everybody in the mellow music Rolodex to kind of put together, prop up Keith for a good album.
Yeah, the Doom features on
there. So
it's on the second one, Feature Magnetic.
Oh, it isn't on.
Is that the one with Superhero?
Oh, damn.
Is the track
yes, the track is called Superhero. Yeah.
That was decent.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I was completely wrong. But yeah, you're right. It's on Feature Magnetic's okay, I think, actually. There's some stuff on there I liked. I certainly haven't listened to it since, but I think I gave it a good rating. And there's some stuff on there that was, again, that was another prop up Keith album because it's all literally features. But
yeah, I like the other one before, the Time Astonishing.
Yeah,
better.
L'Orange is good. Like,
but modern Keith doesn't rap like vintage.
You could have just stopped there. Modern Keith doesn't rap.
No, but they're like Kool Keith is one of my favorite rappers, but like all of his modern stuff, even if the beat is good, it just feels off because he's not rapping as he can.
Yeah, don't listen to the thing he did with Dell. It's a bummer. Like,
I was gonna skip it.
you might as well.
Yeah, Keith Salon
will be, and I'm pretty sure
very
bad about that. So,
but it's because he has a feature on the Jazz Spastic album from last year, and Kool Keith was really rapping like Kool Keith should rap, and I was like, okay, maybe his new album's going to be good. And yeah, that was.
You mean the Beauty Salon album?
Keith Salon, yeah, that's like
no. The Amazing
that was
album in 2021 about being a beautician was not good.
No, but that's the thing is that it was like, okay, I'll give his album a try. Maybe he's back to rapping like how I liked him, and it's like, okay, no, never mind. I'm back to skipping Kool Keith albums for a while.
Yeah. Bring back the heyday of Jackie Jasper rapping about 100 butt plugs back when things were good. But yeah, so I don't have much else to say about Viktor 2. Shout out to friend of the show Diplo back when he was good. He makes one of the better beats on here.
It's got Dub L too on it.
And yeah, I mean it's fine. It's like I wouldn't skip it if you're going through Doom's discography. I would just temper your expectations a little bit. You get less. It's starting the period of where you're getting less and less Doom on the albums, starting the period where maybe Doom's just taking the project for a paycheck, but he's also in his prime every time you hear him, he's going to be great. I think the biggest thing to temper your expectations for is that it's not a character piece like the other Viktor album. He would only do a handful of Viktor features after this, and they're much more in character. Between Villains with Earl and Captain Murphy is amazing. And he also has a track with Hellraiser. How do I mess that up? Hellraiser and Talib Kweli, Project Jazz. That's also really fun. I can't really think of anything else he's done as Viktor other than those. But those are little Lucy's worth.
I didn't even know. Yeah, I forgot that they were actually other Viktor features after that album. I thought that it ended there.
Yeah,
and that's the thing.
I figured that would be just, again, I'm trying a little bit. Again, a lot of things with this podcast is trying to guide people to listen to 17 RX Nephew albums and 18 Heat albums and other stuff they might not listen to. So this is not this is covering stuff they might have heard. So I tried to dig something out. And yeah, there's I believe the only 2 Viktor features post this album. Might be on RYM. I don't know. I have to go look. But yeah.
No, I'm looking now. It's the same.
Yeah. I think you actually heard that album, like the Renaissance Child album or whatever, that Hellraiser album.
Yeah.
I like that.
I heard it, in 2007.
Oh, yeah. So you don't remember it.
Yeah, so 15 years ago, I liked it. But yeah, to give you a why, I don't know. It's too long ago. So the Project Jazz is actually produced by Doom. Interesting.
Man, that's interesting, because that doesn't really... I'm guessing it's probably a really obvious sample then. It sounds more live instrumentation than he normally does, but it's probably a sample because he's not really somebody to do live instruments. But that's one of his better beats, for sure. Anybody else got anything on Viktor 2, or do we want to move on to our last album for this?
I was just gonna say that something you mentioned, Pat, is that even this is him at his prime. Even him phoning it in was still has some fantastic verses, especially compared to when he was phoning it in much later in the 2010s and stuff. I think Fall Back to the Fat is definitely, and Back End are definitely highlights. Whereas MC's Fall Back, it's Vic in your ear with the ear, with a whole ball of wax, call of facts for the freshest round delivery, I'll take out for the fake. You have ballers in the industry. Yeah, it's just that's the second verse on the album, and he's still doing his thing when he's doing his thing, and it's not just a random interlude or he's nowhere to be seen. But yeah, for 32 minutes, I'm listen to maybe a few tracks, and that's about it, really. I don't know.
All right. So, in the interest of wrapping this up sometime before we all die, we're going to go to our very last for this episode, Food, which at the time I would say was my favorite Doom album, and over time has kind of fallen. I would say is my third favorite of the ones we're covering, but I would say, since you asked earlier, would be my choice out of all of them to be an introduction to Doom. I don't know if you guys would agree with that or not, how you felt about it at the time, but I think that in terms of just being an introduction to the way Doom raps, the way he produces, his idea of a concept album, something that's just fucking funny, relatable. In terms of a rap concept album, he picks a really universal concept that's really easy. And other people have used this concept too. Off the top of my head, I can think of Kenny Siegel did Ken Can Cook. Alchemist did the Food Villain, Action Bronson's whole career.
You can check Pseudo Intellectuals, only built for food and drinks.
God damn.
That's a good title.
That's one of my favorites.
No, that's awesome. I can't hate on that.
No, it's a good album from 2021. But yeah, check it if you want.
Yeah, and I feel again, just with the way he uses monster movies on Geedorah, the way he uses the framework of his adolescence on Viktor, the little mini concepts that he uses to explore greater universal themes on Madvillain. It's about more than its surface level concepts, but you can view it on its surface level and enjoy it for that. Just enjoy it for a bunch of bullshitting about how cool his food theme puns sound. They won't be talking that baloney in the bullpen. Beef rap being about rap beef, but also just being a bunch of funny food themed puns. Rap Snitch Kanish is also exploring the same themes. He's taking the piss out of the industry in such a goofy ass way. I think it might be the most endearing Doom album. Maybe the last time he sounded like he was really having, Danger Doom was the last time he sounded like he was really having fun. But you can kind of feel somebody who's like really in their prime, like driving in their lane, finally getting some measure of success and just having fun with their craft.
Yeah, to me, I'd say this is probably peak Doom in terms of this is like the most Doom album.
Yeah.
In a way, he's not necessarily playing one of his other characters, and he's handling most of the production and he's handling most of the rapping. With me, it's just like there is obviously that bit of an asterisk where it's like, like if you take the rap tracks, there is some of his just like the most like some of the best verses ever, to be honest. Like so good, like beef rap, hoe cakes, like one beer, deep fried friends, like each one, like all the way down to like vomit spin and cookies, rap snitch. Like he has a concept and he runs with it. It's funny, it's poignant, just littered with quotables and punchlines. Like to me this is like some of the best Doom, but of course the big asterisk is the skit stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
the big elephant in the room.
Real quick before we get into that, because that's the big
we'll get into that
4-track elephant in the room. But you said poignant. I want to say that I made a point of mentioning, the 2 tracks on Geedorah and then, Great Day and Accordion on Madvillain. I think that even more than those tracks, Con Carne on here with the shuffling cards beat, that lonely beat that just sounds like you're walking through a New York street with like the rain coming down and like splashing on the puddles, and just like Doom just like with his head down reminiscing about his brother. And again, it had that kind of strange ways feeling for me where I didn't really know the whole story until you get that last line and like dedicate this to Sub Rock, the hip hop Hendrix, and then you know what he's talking about. Like, oh fuck, like that's a gut punch again. Like that's just like kick in the teeth, and probably his best introspective song. Really, like I don't know if it doesn't fit into the whole concept, but doesn't matter. Like, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful elegy. But that comes right after in the album, I believe. Well, wait, where does it come in the album? Like, is that right after?
Con Carne, it's right after. Yep.
Yeah, so he's already like. It's good that it comes where it does because we have this long suite of skits, which is really kind of. Would you say is Doom trolling the listener?
No, I'm a big fan of them actually.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Fig Leaf by Carbonate. The other ones I could do without.
No, well, it breaks up the flow of the album if you want just a beats and bars album, but I think it fits the theme and it's part of the album. I don't know, I'm fine with it. I understand the criticism, but I mean the beats are good, so I'm cool. I'm cool with it.
To me, I think it's mainly the sequencing. Like when you look at the track lengths. Like it's 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, and like 3 minutes. Like they're not bad track lengths, and they're really nice beats. And skits are nothing new to Doom, but especially by this point. But to me, it's just the sequencing, like the fact that they're back to back to back to back, and especially the fact that like his verses are so incredible, and so conceptual, that it kind of shoots himself in his own foot by like being so good at the rapping with the verses that when it does come to a sort of a grinding halt. Although I'm looking at Rate Your Music and it seems to be split into like appetizers, special recipes, and entrees. So I don't know I guess maybe like if you split it into 3s like that, I guess maybe, but as like an album where you sit down, you listen to it back and forth, and even. So I think generally it's too self-indulgent. Even like beef rap, like come on, like those skits at the start. As much as I like them, after the first couple listens, I got to skip through.
For a good album intro, I think, man, I ain't eating all day. Like that's right up there with like like the beginning, like Streets Disciple, my rap, like something like that. Like like I feel like that's an iconic.
But it's
intro.
minutes, not seconds.
I don't think you can have this without that. It's also like the illest villains on Madvillainy. Like that's part and parcel with Doom. I think and also I have no problem with the skits individually. It's again a sequencing issue. It's a rare sequencing misstep where it's just like he put this big, God forgive me for this stupid ass pun, undigestible chunk in the middle.
But it's just 6 minutes of 49-minute album.
Yeah, but it's
correct.
It's back.
It is all in a row, though. I understand that. It kind of takes me out of the album. It's why I don't necessarily love it as much as like the other classic Doom stuff.
Yeah,
It's still a great record, but it's not. I'd be honest with you, I rarely listen to this. Like, even so, it's kind of like I would rather listen to a number of other Doom.
I listen to this album a lot, but with the skip button. To be like, I'm going to be completely frank. Yeah, like I skip a lot. Like Beef Rap, skip that. Like on especially on multiple listens when I want to hear, like I just want to get to those amazing verses. Like just quote, like I can almost quote like some of these entire verses. But like, yeah, I'm like,
Cookies is one of the most smart, dumb songs of all time.
Oh, yeah,
Cookies is literally a song based upon getting caught jerking off to internet porn.
The brilliant, like,
and it's brilliant. So fucking funny every time.
Yeah, in terms of like running with the concept.
I don't know no Jenny.
Entire song.
Yeah, and then Jenny.
Yeah. What did it say? Yeah. Supposed to be checking emails. All I got is messages from
ass naked females.
Yeah.
Fine over spilled milk.
Yeah. Yeah, like especially like even some other songs, to be honest. Like there's not only is there skit tracks, like there's 4 in the middle, but most tracks do end or start with skits too. Like they have samples in the intro and outro, which is typical. But the thing is, like on top of that, you have intros, outros, and the skit tracks. When you compare it to Madvillainy before, which. Even Madvillain, like if someone said that's self-indulgent, I'd be like, maybe, but at least there's a lot of variety. Where in this one, I do feel like it's self-indulgent, where it's like, okay, like,
I think it's just more of a difference in, I think it's just more of a difference in construction between Doom and Madlib. Like, I think Madlib, first of all, is better at the way he constructs albums and more fluid. And, like, you can see it in the through line from Madvillain to Further Adventures of Lord Quaz, the way he would do something like O.J. Simpson. Like, that's the extreme end of it in the medicine shows. Like, the way he structures stuff more as collages or, like, as, like, mixtape style almost versus Doom, who, like, they're bigger, blockier, like, kind of like a VHS tape where he's just splicing stuff together one after the other, which is in some ways part of its charm, but it's also clunkier, less fluid. Like still kind of in an older mindset. Like it's a bit of a regression in structure from something like Madvillain, which was so revolutionary.
Yeah.
Well, comparing it to Madvillainy is perhaps unfair, but I really like the album. It's my second favorite by far. Sure. Yeah, even if I said Mr. Hood would be the one that I keep, yes, because it's so different from the rest, but as far as like just straight excellence, this is my second favorite because, it's got so many amazing songs on it and everything's great. Like I don't have a problem with the skits or the sequences of them. I enjoy Doom's rapping or Doom's sample college or however you want to call it. These are two sides of him that I like, and everything comes together on that album is just an incredible listen front to back. It's I think it's worthy of all of its praise as one of the great hip hop albums.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of devil's advocating a little bit or whatever, because I don't want to come across too harsh on it. It's my third favorite just because I have a real place in my heart for Geedorah, and Madvillain's my favorite album of all time. Third favorite, still have it at a high 9. Like the skits are just what keep me from playing it front to back, and that's the only reason. Like a 10 out of 10 for me has to be no skips, period. And I think
that's like a 7 for me.
Yeah, we have different scales. That's been established. It's a 7, so food is just as good as cannabis is kaiju for you, which is takes all time.
No, I have food at 9.
So,
high praise.
What do you think, Caleb, of the skits and
your take?
Placement?
I'm not huge on the skits personally. I understand that they're like with the general theme. I think the first song that I heard from this was like out of context was Rap Snitch Knishes. Someone
because I think they used that on the.
That's right. Yeah, it was on the.
If it was, then I wasn't consciously listening to it.
One beer.
I think it was someone recommended it that like I was following at that point. But that's how I heard it, and I don't really know what ended up like transpiring for me to listen to the rest of the album. But I think it was like legitimately just like hearing a lot of people I follow praise it and cite it as one of like the classic Doom records. So that's how I got into it. And then overall I still think the big songs on here, like Rapskid, Snitch Knishes, Beef Rap, like One Beer, those are still like probably the ones that I would go back to. Most of the middle chunk I don't remember too well because, like I said, I rarely listen to this, and that's no diss against it because listening to it for the first time is a pretty unique experience. I know that like Hoe Cakes definitely was one that I also played a lot in like the general Doom mix, but I wouldn't like necessarily put this album up against other. Like I've listened to Geedorah more than this. I just think it fascinated me more. I listened to Vaudeville and obviously Madvillainy goes without saying, but it didn't quite hit me as some of the other ones. I think I probably listened to Doomsday more than this because I love the intro run to Doomsday so much that I probably listened to that more than this too. So no shade to M Food, which is a great record and justifiably praised. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I can understand arguments for and against. I still think it's wonderful. I don't listen to it as a whole lot, but I listen to individuals. I still bump individual songs fairly regularly. I think Beef Rap's one of his best. As I said, Con Carne.
The rapping is so good on this album.
Con Queso is a song just on a pure technical level. I think is as good as anything he's ever done. That's just to rap over that as well as he does is amazing. I think in the great tradition of Doom songs with other rappers on them, Guinness's is strong.
Oh man, that track, incredible.
Do you remember the video of Mos Def like rapping MF Doom lyrics? Like honestly, all he's doing is doing this album. Like everything he's rapping, he's quoting is all songs from this album.
Yep. Yeah. I think he does quote some Madvillainy, but yeah.
The other episode we did, Sphinx had lots of opinions about how much he did not like the Mos Def Bayon Doom EP, where he does cover like Beef Rap and other stuff. But I thought it very charming. But
I thought you were talking about the YouTube video. I think that played.
Yeah, it's like 2009 or something.
That. Yeah, I was referring to the actual EP that came out, but which I think again was fan made, possibly using those acapellas from that maybe.
No, it's just an interview of Doom's Mos Def saying how much he likes Doom, and he's just rapping his verses, saying, "Look, this is fucking incredible."
He also did Rainbows too, I think, which was really charming. And I remember somebody was doing like a review of a Mos Def show, like from when Mos Def still toured before he became like a world passport holder who couldn't leave like a country or something. And they were complaining because it was like, it was a 2-hour concert, but Mos Def just did like Doom songs for 45 minutes on stage before he did his own music. Which I think is actually hilarious. But you get more Doom music from Mos Def than you do from Doom at a Doom concert.
That's true. But I think that YouTube video, honestly, like that video made me appreciate Doom way more because I think I did like Doom, but I didn't pay attention to what he's saying. But then when I watched that video, because I loved Mos Def much more than Doom at that point. And then when I watched that video where he's just like fully geeking over it, and all he's doing, like you said, Diction is just quoting lines mostly from this album, but I think maybe like a song or two from Madvillainy. But yeah, that's when like I went back. Yeah, he like Beef Rap and Cookies, and then that's when I went back to this Deep Fry Friends, and I started listening to it closer with like an ear of, because like he's a rapper and a writer, so he has that understanding of like how creative you have to be and how technical you have to be to come up with some of these rhymes. And just some of these songs on this album is one of like multiple reasons where like I'm not even gonna attempt to rap. Like after this, like I feel like this Viktor, Vaughn and Madvillain are like in some ways like the pinnacle of rap, and I'm kind of I'm really discouraged. Yeah, I'm kind of like discouraged to like even like attempt. I'm like, well, how can I put words together better than like MF Doom or like these albums? Just incredible. Yeah, and even like the pretty much like 4 or 3 features. Yeah, I mean, 4 Eyes, however you say that, just sort of does a hook. But they like Mr. Fantastic, like really good duet matches. MF Doom on that. Count Basie, of course.
Count Basie is incredible on Potholders. Love that song.
And then Angelica, who's Star, the FMC is Empress Star from the Viktor Vaughn album. Let Me Watch, like fantastic verse. Like it's pretty much just like her song.
Let Me Watch was
Let Me Watch was a Pawnee B, I believe.
Oh, sorry.
Empress, yeah.
The Star was on the King Geedorah.
Geedorah, yeah.
Yeah,
and
Geedorah.
She's on Still Dope on Born Like This, I believe. So.
Yeah. Those 3 verses, amazing. Like all 3 of them. Just fantastic. Like, I should have deaded it from Genesis instead of hitting the Guinnesses. Constant frustration stemming from a no-win situation, Russian lust and fornication added to the complication. I was like, yeah, that was like incredible in terms of like matching MF Doom.
I really have, aside from the skits, I have nothing bad to say about this. It's just a testament to that this is third best in the run, is a testament to how good the run is. I think that's probably a good note to wrap up on, is that, this is like the pinnacle of, I talked about how transformative Madvillain was for me, and obviously I'll let you guys get in some closing thoughts on it. I do have one final question, but this is just kind of the pinnacle of rap as an art form for me, is what Doom does on this run. It's just writing and the way he delivers everything, synthesizes everything, something I can endlessly appreciate that I thought that I liked at the time. That's my appreciation with it has only deepened over the past 15 years, that I don't think I'm ever going to I'm never going to like start losing appreciation for it. Like, he'll still be speaking in rhyme. Well, he unfortunately won't be speaking in rhymes as an old fart. Like, I think he knew how timeless his words are. Like, it's just about a guy who loves writing and rapping, and it was his escape from a really shitty reality. And so he came up with music that helps us all escape our shitty realities. So it's like rap as a fantasy world, but also rap as a creative outlet and a commentary on society and so many fucking things. Just beautiful. So many
it's incredible that these 4 albums came out in an 18-month period. From June 2003 to November 2004. And it's one of the best discographies in hip-hop. Outside of his other shit, because you got Operation Doomsday, KMD, even you can throw in some Special Herbs during that time frame, probably. And Danger Doom.
Don't forget Danger Doom.
So, but this particular run, in 18 months, it's like total prime, really in his zone, and 4 albums that are completely different from one to the other, and they're just of high quality. It's stuff of legends, definitely. Like MF Doom is not it's not a top 5 rapper for me, but immense respect for this. And one of the things that bothers me is that after Danger Doom came out, there was 6 announced projects for 2006 for Doom. None of them ever came out.
All right, let me see if I can remember them. Swift and Changeable, of course.
Yeah. I don't remember them all, but I do remember the number. There was an album with Prince Paul.
Right.
Prince Paul and
was there something with Dilla or not?
There was a KMD album, whatever that means anyway, because probably Rodan, Prince Paul, Ghostface.
I think that Monster Academy thing that I was talking about, I think he was doing one of those.
Yeah, I forgot the others. Mouse and the Mask too, I think, was another one. But
I remember Swift and Changeable being like a whole lot of red style. Like, I mean, YouTube wouldn't relate to that, but like that was the football that kept getting pulled away for a very long time. And like you would occasionally get like Angels was the thing that just kept getting pulled out over and over. It's like, oh, see, this is proof it's happening. Here's Angels again. Here's Angels again.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Then it showed up one like this, and it's like, well, that's all you're getting, really. And then I guess we got the Dilla Sniper Elite, whatever, Dilla Ghost Doom. Like that's pretty much as close as you're going to get to Swift and Changeable.
Yeah,
but Ghost will probably still say it's coming out if you ask him in an interview.
Yeah, and the most annoying thing is when they say, "Oh, it's complete. We're just waiting on Doom," or "No, it's complete. We're just waiting on someone else." I'm like, well, is that even true? Like I know even like Talib Kweli and most stuff. They're like, "Oh, it's complete. We're just waiting on this person. We're just waiting on that person." I know Jay-Z's had some stuff like that too. It's like, yeah, I don't believe this till I see it.
Yeah, well, we'll see about Madvillain 2, whatever Stone's Throw as, but they probably released it like the Sniper Ghosting or whatever it was called. It's probably just leftovers from these sessions, like so they sprinkled it.
Yeah.
Like a Monkey Suit was a Madvillainy 2 track, but
Avalanche.
Yeah, so they sprinkled it through releases over the years. So maybe there's no point in releasing the actual second album or whatever was made for it. I mean, but it will sell like oh shit.
Yeah, I'm just leave the memories alone on this. Just release the goddamn Most Def Zambian rock album already. I've been waiting for that for 10 years. Getting old. Come on. But I guess my final question for the room would be, out of all these projects, one song. You can give one song to somebody who hasn't heard MF Doom before, and you want to give them the Doom experience, something that will turn them into a fan. What song is it?
Accordion.
I was going to say that probably.
It's my favorite Doom song, which is, I know, a very cliche answer, but it's also just one of my favorite songs, period. So I can't really say anything else. I think in the wake of his passing, it's actually improved even more somehow, in my estimation. Like I feel very strongly about that song, just in the context of like looking back on Doom's career and his life, and how much of like a defining statement that like 1 minute and 58 seconds is. So
it's hard. It's a hard question because even if I'm just looking at Madvillainy, like I cannot justify one song over Accordion is an amazing choice.
Yeah,
but then it's like okay, there's Meat Grinder right after, and I like it just as much. And then I'm looking at the other tracks and like, oh shit, Fancy Clown, Strange Ways. Like even Raid is mind blowing, all caps. Like that album is just full of. So I don't know. Okay, I'll go with Accordion. It's an easy answer, and it's got great lines, and it's the name of this podcast.
It is, and that's why I did it. It was a slow pitch softball. There really is no other answer for me. It's Accordion, and normally our outro music is Stagnated Pace by Can Kick, but this episode could only end one way, and that is with Accordion from the greatest album of all time, Madvillainy. Diction, Alex, thank you so much for being on here. Sphinx, Ryan, thank you so much for being on here. And our outro music, as I said, is Accordion from Madvillainy. Daniel Dumoulin, rest in peace. This has been Living Off Borrowed Time. Thank you.
Living off borrowed time, the clock tick faster. That'll be the hour they knock the slick blaster. Dick Dastardly and Muttley with sick laughter. A gunfight and they come to cut the mix master. ICE Cole, nice to be old. Y2G Steve twice to threefold. He sold scrolls, low and behold. Know who's the illest ever, like the greatest story told. keep your glory, gold, and glitter. For half of his niggas will take him out the picture. The other half is rich and it don't mean shit to villain. A mixture between both with a twist of liquor, chase it with more beer. Taste it like truth or dare. When he at the mic, it's like the place get like, oh yeah. It's like they know what's about to happen. Just keep your eye out like I capping. Is he still a fly guy clapping if nobody ain't hear it? And can they testify from in the spirit? And living the true gods, giving y'all nothing but the lick like two broads. Got more lyrics than the church got ooh lords. And they hold the mic in your attention like two swords. Either that or either one with two blades on it. Hey you, don't touch the mic like it's AIDS on it. Yeah, it's like the end to the means. Fuck type of message that sends to the fiends. That's why he bring his own needles and get more cheese than Doritos, Cheetos or Fritos. Slip like Freudian, your first and last step to playing yourself like accordion. When he at the mic, you don't go next. Leaving pussycats like why hoes need Kotex. Exercise index won't need Bowflex and won't take the one with no skinny legs like Joe Tex.